Hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Microphone check. Sorry. Sorry, gotta check these levels. Hello. Welcome. This is the Black Ponderer. I'm the host, Neil Trotter. And yeah, we're just trying to get this set up as good as we can. I'm using the camera that I think is reliable. Might not be as high definition, but it works. I'm using a microphone. I do have a very good microphone, but I think if I used it, I'd have some syncing issues, so it'd be laggy. So you know what? Let's just do the lo-fi, and we know it works. Also, aspect ratio square instead of a 16:9 aspect. But let's just use the default setting, and I'll just go ahead and have the chat on the side because this I know works. So we'll just and I'm a lo-fi person anyway. Oh, hello, Nadia. Hello. Yeah, so I think I'm good to go here. Yep, this is the Black Ponderer. In case you may be watching this later on and you don't know what this channel is a philosophy channel, and we basically talk about philosophy. Pretty much, we read philosophical texts, and then we talk about the themes in the text, and then I give a supplementary commentary. And then, the people who watch can comment below, or sometimes we even do the live streams. Usually, when we do live streams, it's more we just pick a theme. We don't really do text, books. We just talk about a theme. But this time, we're actually going to be talking about a text based off of some viewer requests. So, let's try it out. And we're going to be doing it based off of this book right here. Yep. It's the white balance is a thing because we got this camera that's not that good, but oh well. It's Braiding Sweetgrass. Yeah, I'll show you the subtitle is Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Let's see, levels are good. Just double checking everything here looks okay. Okay, yeah, so usually when we do live streams, we just kind of just hang out and chill, and that's what we're going to do here. So it's more laid back. But so I'm just going to be basically doing what I do on my videos, but it's kind of going to be more elongated form. Oftentimes I kind of cut and center and, focus and don't cover everything. But this one I might actually just go through the whole damn... all of the quotes. We'll see how much time it's going to take. I got a lot of tabs here, and we might just go through the whole damn thing. Extensive, because we just chilling now. So live streams are more laid back. Imagine like you're at a club or a bar, or like, in the back, right? You're where those pool tables are. People shoot pool, but you're not actually shooting pool. You're just on the back. You're chilling. Maybe you're at the bar with the bartender. You just have a conversation. You're not on the dance floor. you're just chilling and having a laid back conversation. Nightclub, cafe, maybe a cafe, lounge. And we just gonna be chilling. It's gonna be conversation. So, I read this book, and it is the greatest book I've ever read in my entire life. It is an amazing book. As you know, we read a lot of philosophy books here, a lot of classic philosophical texts. We're still reading those from Aristotle to Socrates. We got some Sun Tzu, The Art of War. We go through the gambit of, Rene Descartes with his meditations on first philosophy. All this stuff. Sartre and nausea. From continental philosophy to existentialism, we got Buddhism, all types of, we run the gambit here with philosophy. But I just got to tell you, man, I've been reading this book and it has been blowing my mind. My favorite, my before this book I read, it was Walden by Henry David Thoreau, and that's still a very, in my opinion, very, very good book. Very good book. I would say it's my second favorite book. And I really had to think about it. I'm like, does this book really take the cake for me? And this is just a personal thing, but I would like to share with you why it's a personal favorite of mine, and maybe you'll feel that way too. Uh, yeah, but I was thinking because Walden really got me into philosophy. That was kind of like the gateway drug to philosophy. Um, but I think just thinking about it, like I was like, yeah, this ain't as good as Walden when I was reading Braided Sweetgrass. But then I was like, you know what? That's the nostalgia talking. That's the nostalgia talking. It's like this book is just better. It's just a better book. And why is it so good? Ultimately, the reason why it's so good, I think, is because we are living in tough times these days. I mean, the thing is, like, our times really tougher than they were. That's up to people to decide. The United States president and all this, and people are getting depressed, and then climate change and like all these, social inequities, and people are like, oh shit, man, what are we gonna do about this? And people just don't. People are at a loss. They're like, how are we gonna get through this shit? And I would tell you, like, this book, it tells you. It's like a guidebook. It's like it tells you exactly. Honestly, it tells you exactly what you need to do, and that's pretty freaking amazing. There's a lot of philosophy books that they give you guidance and they give you like you know, guidelines and like, in these times you should do this. It's not going to give you the best answer, but it might help you along the way. This book right here, it's telling you like this is what you need to do exactly, and if we do this, we can get through this. We can save the world, right? And you might think that's a really bold claim, and I might be over exaggerating, but I don't think I am. I don't think I am. I think this book is a lot of like if you're in one of those situations where you feel hopeless or you're looking at the future of the world and you're like, oh shit, we're fucked. I would encourage you highly to read this book. And I would challenge you. I think after you read this book, you'll be like, okay, I know I'm out of that hopelessness. I know what to do. Right? I know like how need to go about this, and I got like things, tools that I could use to make this world better despite its state. And what's cool about it, what's even more encouraging about it, is that what the author is talking about is like, look, we already know these things. Like these things have already been implemented, right? Nature already does this. We can see it in nature. Indigenous people have been doing these things way, way in the past. It's just, cultural erasure based off, European colonialism so we don't, there's this lack of like, we forgot, intentionally. Like, so that's what's encouraging about it. It's like, this isn't anything new, right? This is nothing new. Like, humanity has done this, and also we see this in nature. So it's not like this daunting thing. It's not like, oh, you give an answer, okay, this is what we need to do, but it's so hard. No, it's like, that's what's so encouraging about it. It's like, we know we can do this because we've already done it. So, and so that's why I think this is an amazing book. And that's what philosophy ultimately, in my opinion, is about, right? It's about like, how do you get through this world, finding ways to navigate through the world and find meaning and find like your place in society and the world, and like helping people and your environment. And it's about like using ideas to make the world better. Right? It's a masterpiece. Well, I'll just start reading some quotes, and we'll just talk about them. And then Nadia says, "Tough in a different way." I suppose in a different way. I mean, I don't even know about that. Maybe, maybe if you really like think about it, like, is it really that different? I don't know. But I'll read you some quotes. Hello, Jeremy. This is page 6, right? And this is the second paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth line. Oh yeah. Yeah. So this is cool. Yeah. So the author is a college university professor, and she's talking to her students. And this is what I'll just read. They were asked to rate their understanding of the negative interactions between humans and the environment. Her students, right? It's like she's given a survey. Nearly every one of the 200 students said confidently that humans and nature are a bad mix. These were third-year students who had selected a career in environmental protection, so the response was, in a way, not very surprising. They were well schooled in the mechanics of climate change, toxins in the land and water, and the crisis of habitat loss. Later in the survey, they were asked to rate their knowledge of positive interactions between people and land. The medium response was none. So, they say, like, yeah, when you mix human beings with nature, it's horrible. It's a horrible mix. We don't do well with nature. That's this dominant type of thinking. And so I skipped down to 3 lines. The negative examples they see every day, brownfields, factory farms, suburban sprawl, truncated their ability to see some good between humans and the earth. As the land becomes impoverished, so too does the scope of their vision. Mm-hmm. So they can't see like human beings having a positive relationship with nature. Like it's just there's not in their imagination. And isn't that kind of builds in today's hopelessness? People are like, oh, it's just, we're fucked. Like human beings they can't function with nature in a positive way. Like, look. And so the author is like challenging that point of view. They could not even imagine what beneficial relationships between their species and others might look like. How can we begin to move toward ecological and cultural sustainability if we cannot even imagine what the path feels like? The imagination is messed up. And so I put in my notes, activism requires imagination and creativity to construct new worlds outside the capitalist imaginary, right? So like we're just locked into this understanding that humans and nature are separate. That's not true, right? Or like, as the examples that we have is human beings are constantly destroying nature, right? Because of capitalism, right? But that's just like, and so we get trapped in this kind of thinking like, yeah, humans are just the scourge of Earth and like the world is better without humans, right? But that's actually not true. It's just the way we think about our relationship with nature. That's what's bad, right? But human beings have been benefiting nature. This has been this beneficial reciprocal nature relationship for thousands of years, and then we'll go into like indigenous cultures that have had these beneficial relationships with nature, right? And we can bring it back, but we kind of get lost in the capitalist imaginary, and so. The work of living is creating that map for yourself. So we got to do that. And then you're saying, oh, Jeremy's already throwing me some recommendations. For next live book discourse, if possible, could you talk about Free and Equal Manifesto for a Just Society? Well, first I got to read it, right? So never read that before. So I put it on my queue, but my queue is very long. How can people say that humans don't get along with nature? That screams pathology. Well, I mean, it's very easy to see, right? I mean, look what we've done. I mean, we are causing the climate to change. Like we're like the only species ever in the history of on the Earth that is changing the climate in a way that negatively impacts our survivability. Like we're the first species to do that, right? Of all the many species to have lived, and just look at all the pollution we create, right? Like, and all the the destruction we've caused environment. I mean, it's not hard to come to that conclusion. It's like, but it's also like we need to like realize that has not always been the case, right? But we kind of live in this society where we're kind of locked into thinking that's the case in our social systems, like capitalism, for instance, or things like patriarchy is another one. Uh, it's hard for us to imagine positive relationships with nature that we've had, but we'll continue. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let me read you. This is page 15. This is the second paragraph here. Psycho. What is this? Okay, I'll just read you why I highlighted this. A cycle remains a playground of hypothesis for tree physiologists and evolutionary biologists. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me repeat. This boom and bust cycle remains a playground of hypothesis for trees, physiologists, and evolutionary biologists. Forest ecologists hypothesize that mass fruiting is the simple outcome of this energetic equation. Make fruit only when you can afford it. That makes sense. But trees grow and accumulate calories at different rates depending on their habitats. So, like the settlers who got the fertile farmland, the fortunate ones would get rich quickly and fruit often, while their shaded neighbors would struggle and only rarely have an abundance waiting for years to reproduce. If this were true, each tree would fruit on its own schedule, predictable by the size of its reserves of stored starch. But they don't. If one tree fruits, they all fruit. There are no soloists. Not one tree in a grove, but the whole grove. Not one grove in the forest, but every grove. All across the country and all across the state. The trees act not as individuals, but somehow as a collective. Exactly how they do this, we don't yet know. But what we see is the power of unity. What happens to one happens to us all. We can starve together or feast together. All flourishing is mutual. So what he's talking about, what the author, what she's talking about here is how trees and forests, they'll collaborate with each other, and they will produce fruit and produce like energy in a collaborative way. And we don't really know. Science has yet to explain like how they are collaborating in this unified way. And they're forest trees and plant life in forests. They don't act as individuals. They act as a collective, right? And that has provided them with huge success, right? And so what the author's point is like we can learn from nature. Right? Nature functions in this commutative, collaborative, collective, right? This socialist way, right? This communist way, right? Where they're sharing amongst, and it's highly successful. They're way more successful as a species than we are, right? So it's you saying like we can learn, and that's one of the themes of this book. Like all you gotta do is look at nature to understand like how do we succeed as a species. Well, just look at all the species that are succeeding. And then Jeremy says, modern society will benefit from nature by establishing urban farms and farmers market. Yeah, they definitely will. That's true. To establish more and get rid of the, factory farms, right? Let me go to page 16 here. This is at the top. We make a grave error if we try to separate individual well-being from the health of the whole. The gift of abundance from pecans is also a gift to themselves. By saturating squirrels and people, the trees are ensuring their own survival. The genes that translate to mass fruiting flow on evolutionary currents into the next generations, while those that lack the ability to participate will be eaten and reach an evolutionary dead end. Just so, people who know how to read the land for nuts and carry them home to safety will survive the February blizzards and pass on that behavior to their uh, progen, progeny, progeny, not by genetic transmission, but by cultural practice. Mm-hmm. So, you're just reiterating the previous point. This mutual reciprocal relationship by helping other species, you help your whole your own species, right? And this is a kind of cultural practice, right? This is like this mutual reciprocal, like communal collective way of surviving, right? It's a cultural practice, right? That is helps all species to survive, right? I think this is separation of humanity and nature has to do with fear of the wild. Well, uh, I mean, I think the author is saying like, yeah, that fear of the wild really wasn't a thing until, I mean, of course, human beings were afraid of, predators and stuff like, like big. But, for the most part, like most, human beings learned to coexist with the wild. And there was a lot of reverence and which we'll go into, and collaboration with the wild. The fear of the wild has become more and more of a thing with our like exploitative systems, like kind of the modern era, right? This is page 19, third paragraph here. Science pretends to be purely rational, completely neutral, a system of knowledge making in which the observation is independent of the observer. Yeah, science does like to pretend that that's the case, isn't it? Then page 20, this is the second to last sentence of the first paragraph. There is so much we cannot yet sense with our limited human capacity. Tree conversations are still far above our heads. Trees do actually communicate with each other. Like that's a thing that actually happens, right? We know this. We just, modern science doesn't know exactly how that happens, right? But so there's all types of things science doesn't know. Right? And this is the bottom of the second paragraph, right, of this page. Through unity's survival, all flourishing is mutual. Soil, fungus, tree, squirrel boy, squirrel boy. All are the beneficiaries of reciprocity. How generously they shower us with food, literally giving themselves so that we can live. But in the giving, their lives are also insured. Our taking returns benefit to them in the circle of life, making life the chain of reciprocity. Right, so nature is all about reciprocating, resources, right? And that's another thing that a huge theme in this book. Let's see, this is reminding me of dualist versus animist thinking. Yeah, there you go. Cool. Got some of that going on. Okay, this is page 26. It's funny how the nature of an object is so changed by the way it has come into your hands and as a gift or as a commodity. Okay. And then I skip a few lines. I have paid for them in our reciprocity ended the minute I handed her the money. The exchange ends once parity has been established, an equal exchange, right? So, what the authors talk about here is, it's interesting, an object, how we perceive an object, the way it's received, right? That's philosophical, right? If it's just like a commodity, if it's like, okay, I'm gonna pay, here's some money, I want that object. Okay, give me the money. Okay, I got it. So now that's like it's transactional, and you don't really think. You think of the commodity in a certain way. That's like more like, well, this is an object I'm using. It's an object that's a means to an end, right? There's like little subjectivity, or if any, right? Now, if it's like a gift, like something that's fosters a relationship, then you think about it differently, right? Well, what's that like? It's kind of like, let's think about use the what we're doing now with YouTube. Let's do this with YouTube, right? YouTube, you can monetize your videos, and you can start focusing on like making money on YouTube and focusing on ads and all that. And so when you do that, your videos become more like commodities, right? Then so the viewers start to form a kind of the relationship you have with the people watching you is one that's transactional. It's like, well, they're just giving me entertainment. They're just an entertainer, right? And it becomes an objectified situation. But if it's like, look, like what we're doing now, right? I'm having a conversation. We got some people on, Jeremy, Nadia, they're kind of my friends, right? I consider them friends, right? It's a meaningful. So what's happening is the video is not just like I'm learning something, or we're having a conversation. We're forming a relationship. And so there's a kind of different way of interpreting this video, right? You're receiving this video in like a deeper way, in a way where like we are like forming a relationship with each other, right? And that's deep. So this video is not like a commodity, right? It's like, this is transactional, right? I'm sure YouTube puts ads on there or whatever. I have no control over that. I don't monetize, but YouTube is YouTube. But that's what she's talking about here, the author. And then Nadia says, "Oh, Jeremy says the book that I recommend you has the key term reciprocity too." Okay, cool. Nadia says, "I love the quote on this page. A gift creates an ongoing relationship." Did I? Oh yeah. I highlighted that. That's actually the next sentence I was going to read. A gift creates ongoing relationship. Yep, exactly. I actually highlighted that. I don't know if you could. You probably can't see it because my camera's poor. Well, there you go. It is the cardinal difference between gift and commodity exchange that a gift establishes a feeling bond between two people. Mm-hmm. And here I am on page 27. And this is what, the third paragraph? That is the fundamental nature of gifts. They move and their value increases with their passage. And then I skip a line. The more something is shared, the greater its value becomes. This is hard to grasp for societies steeped in notions of private property, where others are by definition excluded from sharing. Mm-hmm. So, this is how our imagination gets stifled, right? Where we're like, well, human beings can have positive relationships with nature. Well, it's because we like are discouraged to share, right? Where like everything is a commodity. Where we are programmed. We're raised to think that commodification is good. Like, that's a good thing. Where it's like it's actually destroying us, right? And if we were to treat things not so much as commodities, or not as commodities at all, then we can start thinking about, oh yeah, actually we can form very positive relationships with nature, right? I put in my notes here. A gift is a way to build a relationship. The meaning in life. What is this? What did I? The meaning in life is the relationships. Are the relationships we have with each other. Mm-hmm. It's sad when you can't even read your own handwriting. Anyway, commodity economies destroy this meaning. Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true. I like this analogy, Neil, connecting it to live videos. That's why I love attending them so much. Oh, yeah, cool, yeah. Yeah, that's why I don't. I mean, there's several reasons, um, but I can't bring myself to monetize my YouTube channel. Like, and I'm not, you know, I'm holier than thou. Like, I'm not doing all that bullshit. People, they could do whatever they want to do, but I refuse. I refuse to, create information as something that sells people. It's just no. It's easy for me to do that because I have a day job, right? But yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, so let me go to the next page here. This is page 28, third line. Indigenous people understood the value of the gift to be based on reciprocity and would be affronted if the gifts did not circulate back to them. Many of our ancient teachings counsel that whatever we have been given is supposed to be given away again, right? And so this is the point where the author is like, look, we've already done this. We've already lived this way before, but people have forgotten, and it's due to like cultural erasure, right? By Eurocentrism, white supremacy. It's like, oh, capitalism is the thing that that has always been, or like the world was horrible and then capitalism came into being, and then the world got good, right? But we forgot, like, no, actually, like people we were more of a gift economy, right? Or like there were several gift economies in the ancient world that were highly successful and that coexisted very positively with nature, right? And humanity has done this many times. So that's where we need to get back to, right? That's what we need to follow, the old models, right? From the viewpoint of a private property economy, the gift is deemed to be free because we obtained it free of charge at no cost. But in the gift economy, gifts are not free. The essence of the gift is that it creates a set of relationships. The currency of a gift economy is at its root reciprocity, right? So ultimately, it's all about the relationships we form with each other. And as we exchange things with each other, like YouTube videos, information, and that's just an example, right? They're using this other example. We're forming a relationship, So, what they're saying is, go back to the whole, I want to buy a cell phone. How much is it? Oh, it's $500. Okay, boom. Or like, I want a cell phone. Oh, it's, I'm going to give this to you for free. For free? Really? Thanks. All right, got that for free. I didn't have to work a dime. But it's like, but the indigenous way would be like, oh wow, like that person really, they helped me out. They gave me something. So now I have a relationship with this person. That person really cares about me. I should, now it's my turn to give back to this person. And it's not about like, it's not a transactional thing. It's like, wow, we got a relationship with each other now. So it's not, the currency is reciprocity. But it's not like, oh, now I got to give it. It's like, no, it's good because we are, having fun with this relationship that we're building with each other, right? And isn't that really what life's, at the end of the day, the best parts of life are the positive relationships we have with each other, right? So it's good. In Western thinking, private land is understood to be a bundle of rights. Whereas in gift economy, property has a bundle of responsibilities attached to it, right? Because now you have a relationship, and relationships require, that you have responsibilities with the relationships. You have to foster the relationship. This is page 32, third to last line. A great longing is upon us to live again in a world made of gifts. And then I wrote in my notes, the shallowness of capitalism does not fill the soul. Depression, anxiety, and loneliness are rampant. People are ready for mutual aid, right? We're ready for it. Like, there's a whole loneliness epidemic, which I've talked about several times in many books. It's like we live in these metropolitan cities, these metropolises, all people all over the place, but still everybody's lonely, because this commodity culture is like not, fulfilling our need for relationships. Everything's transactional and nothing is about like actually like getting to know each other. And part of when we've been the past, like when commodity products and the capitalist way of life wasn't the default norm, right? uh, Resources were exchanged with each other, through this relationship building rather than like resources. So everybody was in communion with each other, as opposed to today, right? We exchanging resources to just fill our bank accounts, and we think that's a good. Like, oh yeah, no, it's good to like they just give you some resources, you give me money, and then we'll get rich. And it's like, and then you go home and you're like, fuck, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm lonely. Like, what's going on? It's like, well, the people you're exchanging resources with, you're not forming relationships, so you feel empty and shit. That's the problem, right? Let's go to page 37. Oh yeah, and she talks about ceremony, because like many cultures, ceremony is huge. And then indigenous cultures, ceremony was a big thing. And she says here on page 37, last sentence of the first paragraph, ceremony is a vehicle for belonging to a family, to a people, and to the land. And I just wrote again, building relationship. And then this is the second to last line of that page. That, I think, is the power of ceremony. It marries the mundane to the sacred. The water turns to wine, the coffee to a prayer, the material and the spiritual mingle like grounds mingle with hummus, transformed like steam rising from a mug into the morning mist. What else can you offer the earth, which has everything? What else can you give but something of yourself? A homemade ceremony, a ceremony that makes a home. And then I wrote in my notes, the sacred is an imaginary. Really? The sacred is it? Yes, yes, yes. The sacred is an imaginary, a creative expression of spirit. Spirituality is artistry. Creativity is how we commune with nature. Right. So one of the really great things about this book, the author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, right? Probably butchering the last name. She is a scientist, a university professor, and she's religious. She's spiritual, I guess is the word. She's spiritual. And she doesn't have any issue with like merging or coexisting with religion or spirituality and science. Which I find that like extremely rare. Right? A lot of people have difficulty reconciling those. They have like huge problems with that, right? And and I think that's one of the and she's saying like in the past, like indigenous peoples, because science, that's another thing in this westernized thinking, Western civilization. We think like, human beings are more scientific. We've developed science, but science is very, the way we see science today is this very narrow ass way. this practice, the scientific method, which is, I'm not knocking modern science. Modern science has this very positive aspects to it, but it's not like people were not scientific before Western civilization. Right? Like there are like immense science practices in indigenous cultures, thousands of years ago. There are plenty of scientists, right? At the same time, like back then, they didn't have this issue of like, well, if you're a science, you're gonna have problems with religion, or like spirituality. Like, there's this odds in this clash, but she's saying like we need to get back to the point where that wasn't like a problem. We need to get back to a way of life where science and spirituality just blended together. And one of the ways you could do that is through ceremony, right? Um, I do think that's like a huge problem with modern society. I think like that leads to a lot of like damage, where it's like either like religion is very anti-scientific, and then science, often you'll see scientists that are very anti-spiritual, and it's like and it's really just causing a lot of like culture wars, right? And a lot of disconnect with nature, right? A lot of disconnect with nature because in science, like there's this lack of acknowledgement that not everything can be understood. Now you might say like, well, the point of science actually is that is that we don't understand everything, and the scientific method is that's the point. Like you don't understand, you limit to what you know, right? But there's many, if you talk about science as an institution, right, as the scientific institution, most of the time that's not the case, right? There's a lot of God complexes, and a lot of like scientists who think like, we could just know everything, and things that we don't understand, we're just gonna discount them, and they're not important, right? And then just all types of problematic things like that. And, yeah, but she doesn't have a problem with integrating spirituality and science, and she could differentiate between the two, and also understand the limits of both, and understand how they can be mutually beneficial. That's that's a concept, right? Spirituality and science mutually beneficial. She talks about that. I think we've completely lost that in our modern society. Um, and then Nadia says, "Can you elaborate on your thoughts about how creativity is how we relate to nature?" Again, it's like it's back to those students who are like, I don't know how the hell has humanity can't function successfully with nature. We just constantly destroy nature, and there's just like there's just no way of people like figuring out, well, how do we actually succeed, benefit nature? How does human how what do human beings that make nature that help nature to prosper, right? And so to answer that question, right, we got to be creative, right? We got to be imaginative, right? Because the current models that we have are not going to give us the answers to those questions, right? Yes, the current models we have is like exploit, dominate, commodify, right? We're going to have to think outside the box, right? We're going to be like, okay, we're just going to have to reject a lot of the mainstream points of ways of thinking, and then so what can you do? Like gardening. Right. And she talks about a lot of that in, about like planting crops that are diverse. There's a chapter, and we might get to it, we might not, about how she talks about corn. I forgot that there's these three plants that she talks about. Beans, I think is the potatoes, beans, corn, and potatoes. And they grow them together, the three together, and they mutually benefit each other, right? As opposed to now, right? We're just like have these monocrops, right? That are, kind of we terraform the earth, and it just, kind of destroys it, right? So it's just ways of like research, like gift economies. That's another way. You might say like, well, I don't know how. Like for people say like, well, I know capitalism is bad, but that's just how the world is today. That's just how, that's the way the world works. We live in a capitalist society. Oh, well, what you got to do is like, you're not even trying to use your imagination, right? You're not even like, well, is it like, I mean, can you at least stop and think like, well, how is it possible? Like, if you're a child, like children would be like, well, let's think about this for a minute. Let's like imagine. But as we get older, we start locking into our ways and be like, well, it just is what it is, without even using our creativity or imagination to solve the problems of our environment. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, a lot of people will say like, well, we can't really solve these problems. It's like, well, that's because you're not using your imagination, right? Your creativity, right? But yeah, the three sisters: beans, corn, and sweet potatoes. Yeah. Oh, squash. Yeah, squash. Yeah, right. Yeah, the three sisters. Uh, yeah, and like, so that's it. And so the story, right, of the three sisters is like the spiritual story, and it's like, so it's not just beans, corn, and squash. it's it's like, well, how do they interrelate with each other? So there's this indigenous story that was associated with it called the Three Sisters, which is a creative, imaginative story that describes the relationship between these three plants in a way that's like very effective. Right? It's very effective. It's that's what I'm talking about with like ceremony and spirituality merging with creativity. You got these stories that are these spiritual practices that are highly imaginative and creative, and they teach human beings how to function successfully in life in ways that science just can't do. Right? I mean, science gives you like the just the factual, like, do this, do that, this is how it is, like, it tells you what it is. Right? But it doesn't describe things like, well, how does this interrelate with human well-being? Right? Or like, how are we affected by this emotionally? Right? Or how does this foster mutual relationship? Right? The technical can only go so far. You got to be creative, right, to fully describe what's going on, right, or like the positive benefits, right. So that's what I'm talking about, right. But we can keep going here. What is this? This is page 41. Let's see, in the middle of the fourth paragraph. I didn't think about it at the time, but it was happening all over again. An echo of my grandfather's first day at school, when he was ordered to leave everything, language, culture, family behind. The professor made me doubt where I came from, what I knew and claimed, and that his was the right way to think. Only he didn't cut my hair off, right? So this is exactly following up exactly what we're talking about, right? So the author was like, she's talking about how she first applied for college, and the advisor was like, okay, what do you want to succeed as? What do you want to do as a botanist? And she's like, yeah, I want to like understand the mutual relationship between various plants. And the professor, the white advisor guy, was like, yeah, silly girl, silly Indian girl, like, that's not what we do here in science. Science is not about that, you silly Indian girl. This is basically like pretty much what he did. Science is about like classifying and understanding what things are, not how they relate to each other. Right? But my advisor said it's not science. That's not what botany is about. Right? And so that's exactly what we're talking. Not science, he said. And if you want to study beauty, you should go to art school. Right? Like science is not about beauty, right? so that's exactly what we're talking about. Right? In moving from a childhood in the woods to the university, I had unknowingly shifted between worldviews, from a natural history of experience in which I knew plants as teachers and companions to who I was linked with mutual responsibility, into the realm of science. The questions scientists raised were not, who are you, but what is it? No one asked plants, what can you tell us? Right? Could you imagine, like a scientist today? What can you tell us? But that's what science should be about, right? But you know, that's what I'm talking about. Like science as an institution. The institution of science is like, no, 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 we don't do that. We're just like, what is this thing? The primary question was, how does it work? The botany I was taught was reductionist, mechanistic, and strictly objective. Plants were reduced to objects, they were not subjects. The way botany was conceived and taught didn't seem to leave much room for a person who taught the way I did. The only way I could make sense of it was to conclude that the things I had always believed about plants must not be true after all. And then I skip to the third paragraph here on page 42. My natural inclination was to see relationships, to seek the threads that connect the world, to join instead of divide. But science is rigorous in separating the observer from the observed, and the observed from the observer. This is a scientist, by the way, who's saying it. So she's admitting the flaws of science. Why two flowers are beautiful together would violate the division necessary for objectivity, right? So, in science, the whole idea is, I mean, and this is like a westernized, Eurocentric understanding of science, right? Is like you have to objectify everything, right? And she's like, well, that's actually destructive, right? If we understand the world as just a set of objects, then how do we form relationships, right? How do we like see ourselves in nature? We don't, right? Because we're objectifying nature, which is what science is. It promotes, right? It promotes that, which is that's what she's talking about. And then this is page 46, third paragraph. Why are they beautiful together? It is a phenomenon simultaneously material and spiritual. Let me repeat that. Why are they beautiful together? It is a phenomenon simultaneously material and spiritual. That's what we just talked about. She has no problem merging the two. For which we need all wavelengths, for which we need depth perception. When I stare too long at the world with science eyes, I see an afterimage of traditional knowledge. Might science and traditional knowledge be purple and yellow to one another? Oh yeah, where she talks about the color theory. Might they be goldenrod and asters? We see the world more fully when we use both. What she's saying about. She was talking about color theory and how certain colors complement each other. Why? Well, science can only explain so much of that, right? We need to start if you really want to understand the depth of why things relate to each other, there needs to be more than a material, right? That's what she's saying. But she say we got to use both. Both are necessary. This is page 47. This is second paragraph. In indigenous ways of knowing, we understand a thing only when we understand it with all four aspects of our being: mind, body, emotion, and spirit. I came to understand quite sharply when I began my training as a scientist that science privileges only one, possibly two, of those ways of knowing, mind and body. As a young person, wanting to know everything about plants, I did not question this. But it is a whole human being who finds the beautiful path. Then I skip to the last paragraph. The beauty of one is illuminated by the radiance of the other. Science and art, matter and spirit, indigenous knowledge and Western science. Can they be goldenrod and asters for each other? Complementary colors. Right? I think they can. I think the author's making the case that sure. And then this is page 49, fourth line. Science can be a language of distance which reduces a being to its working parts. It is a language of objects. The language scientists speak, however precise, is based on a profound error in grammar, an omission, a grave loss in translation from the native languages of these shores. So, a stern criticism of science, but, she's a scientist, so she's hey, I'm a scientist. Like, I believe it. It's, she's being fair. It's much like I do reverse and on this channel, the Black Ponderer. I'm a Christian. Like, I'm a religious person, but you'll often see me criticize Christianity and religion like all the damn time, right? Because Christianity has huge flaws that are destructive to human society, right? And I'll be the first, but I am religious, just same way with what she's talking about here. With science, like, look, there's some great things about science, but we can't. It's not a complete system, right? And there are some things that that science has done to our species that have made us astray, right? But she's saying like embrace the science and spirituality as well, or like indigenous knowledge, right? Which is basically a kind of spirituality, right? And then we got page 55. This is the second paragraph, fourth line. In English, if we never refer to a member of our family, or indeed to any person, as it, that would be a profound act of disrespect, right? It robs a person of selfhood and kinship, and reducing a person to a mere thing. So it is that in Potawatomi, I mispronounced that, I'm sorry, and most other indigenous languages, we use the same words to address the living world as we use for our family, because they are our family. To whom does our language extend the grammar of animacy? I think I've mentioned before, like animist thinking, dualist versus animist thinking. All right. And then I just go page 56, third paragraph. English doesn't give us many tools of incorporating respect for animacy. In English, you are either a human or a thing. Our grammar boxes us in by the choice of reducing a non-human being to an it, or it must be gendered inappropriately as a he or she. Where are our words for the simple existence of another living being? So again, like, this is where creativity and imagination come into play, because we have these social structures. Language is one of them that locks us into ways of thinking that are like actually harmful to well-being. Like, English kind of locks us into that. We got to even start imagining realities outside of our language. And how do you do that? Well, you start studying languages, and you give credence to indigenous cultures and like indigenous languages, and you're like, okay, how did they speak? And this is the fourth paragraph here, third line. Bilingual between the lexicon of science and the grammar of animacy. I skipped down a line. Know the world as a neighborhood of non-human residents, to know that, as eco-theologian Thomas Berry has written, we must say of the universe that it is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. Communion, very close to the word communism. Communion, right? I'm just saying. Let's see. Nadia says, I guess in the more recent years, I have heard that some people prefer to be referred to as it, although it doesn't seem very common. And that's a thing, like, that's into consideration. I actually covered a book on this channel. It's a fictional book, right? What's it called? A Psalm for the Wild Built, I think it's called. And it's a robot in the book, a sentient robot. And the robot prefers to be called it. And he's like, no, I'm an object. So there's that. And, there's a thing there. But, even if you're saying like, I want to be called it, right? Or like, you're still like acknowledging the wishes of the person, right? You're still acknowledging the thing, the person as a subject through your acknowledgement that it prefers to be called it, right? It, as opposed to like, well, it doesn't need to be acknowledged because it's not actually a person, period. Right? This lack of it. So, here we have like, what is it called? Like getting in the weeds of language, which are important. But I think the point is like acknowledging the personhood of all things, right? Even like non-human things, right? And then we can keep going here on page 57, paragraph 2, second line. The animacy of the world is something we already know, but the language of animacy teeters on extinction, not just for native peoples, but for everyone. Our toddlers speak of plants and animals as if they were people, extending to them self and intention and compassion until we teach them not to. We quickly retrain them and make them forget. When we tell them that the tree is not a who, but an it, we make that maple an object. And so, what we're saying here is when the tree, in the sense that is it means like, oh, it's not a thing that you need to respect. Right? You can just bulldoze it. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not a who. When you infer, like, when you say who, you're like, oh, okay, wait, well, hold on a minute. Let me, like, before I harm or like cause damage, like I need to like rethink, right? Acknowledge the thing, the tree as a person, which is, I think we don't do at all. We make that maple an object. We put a barrier between us, absolving ourselves of moral responsibility and opening the door to exploitation. Saying it makes a living land into natural resources. If a maple is an it, we can take up the chainsaw. If the maple is a her, we think twice. All right. And then you say, I understand what you're saying. That makes sense. Yeah. Then this is the third paragraph, page 57. Let's see, fit to the last line. Just because we don't think of them as humans doesn't mean they aren't beings. Isn't it even more disrespectful to assume that we're the only species that counts as persons? The arrogance of English is that the only way to be animate, to be worthy of respect and moral concern, is to be human, to be a human. Grammar is just the way we chart relationships in language. Maybe it also reflects our relationships with each other. Maybe a grammar of animacy could lead us to whole new ways of living in the world. Learning the grammar of animacy could well be a restraint on our mindless exploitation of land. Imagine the possibilities. Imagine the access we would have to different perspectives, the things we might see through other eyes, the wisdom that surrounds us. We don't have to figure out everything by ourselves. There are intelligence other than our own. Teachers all around us. Imagine how much less lonely the world would be. Right? And the author's talking about, like, I like that. There are intelligences other than our own. Right? We think like human beings are the most intelligent of all species. And then we have this narrow scope of what intelligence is. But there are many different kinds of intelligences. Yeah, everything is a spectrum, isn't it? It's a multi-dimensional, right? And we don't acknowledge. That's another thing we don't acknowledge. Like, the tree has a kind of intelligence too. Maybe it's not the same as our intelligence, but it has an intelligence as it successfully communicates with other trees in a forest and other. That's a kind of intelligence, right? That we don't, acknowledge as, like, we don't acknowledge that as that communication between beings that happens. That we have yet to understand. We don't acknowledge that as a kind of intelligence. But if we did, maybe we can learn something from it, right? That's what this book is. A lot of this book is about. Is like, the answers are already before us. Like, let's not go into despair. Like, we can learn so much. And the other thing is indigenous cultures already understood this. Right? So it's not like we can't learn it. We've already known this in the past. So yeah, it's cool. Let's keep going. We could go overtime because I think last stream we went overtime, right? We'll go. We'll keep going. We'll see how far this takes. Page 92, second paragraph. Restoring a habitat, no matter how well intentioned, produces casualties. We set ourselves up as arbiters of what is good when often our standards of goodness are driven by narrow interests, by what we want. Right? Right. So again, the whole like locked into like a way of thinking by a narrow standard of goodness because of our interests. What kind of interest? Well, getting rich. And what does it mean by getting rich? Like, having a lot of like money, which makes life easier in many ways. But that the sad part is getting rich is exploitative. So somebody has to suffer for your richness. That's just how our system is. And so then we go to the whole going back to the original comment of, well, it's just how it is. That's just how it is. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Right? It doesn't have to be that way. We have to imagine our reality out of this. And fortunately, we have models that we can go back to. This is page 11, second paragraph. Oh, page 111, my bad. Imagine raising children in a culture in which gratitude is the first priority. Oh, yeah. I remember this. So I read this book because I'm part of a book club. Right? And a book club recommended this book, and there was a chapter. So we just had this discussion about this specific chapter during like around the Thanksgiving holiday. It was pretty awesome. And it talks about this address that a lot of indigenous is like a mantra, or like let's see what the chapter says. The Thanksgiving address. Is that what it is? It's a great chapter. Let me see. I keep skipping that page. Oh, allegiance to gratitude, because in America we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, which is a damn lie, right? She talks about that, and she talks about how her daughter refused to like stand up and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, which is a thing that happens. I went to a ghetto school, in America, like particularly in the past, like old school, probably like kind of before I was born, but it's still like many schools, like you have to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I went to a ghetto ass school where we didn't do that. We didn't do that at all. We didn't do any of that pledging of allegiance, but you do that at some like maybe a basketball, like a sports game or something like that. So that's why I know it by heart. But the thing is, like, there's definitely people that grow up who, they take that wholeheartedly, Americans. But a lot of Americans, they just kind of recite it, and, it's just like blah, 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 blah. They hear it, and they know it's hypocritical. Like, you almost, it's pretty obvious, right? Particularly like, if you're a black guy or, you're black or you're a minority group. But even a lot of privileged people, they just like, well, they just see the racism and all this in the world. They're like, yeah, but obviously that's bullshit. So you grow up with this cynicism is what the author is saying. Like, you grow up reciting this thing that is not true. And so you grow up you have this sense of the world is hypocritical. You become a cynic. You're like, yeah, nothing is really true, really. Everybody's lying to each other. Nobody's authentic. It starts early. Like the Pledge of Allegiance starts because most people don't really believe that, right? There's this misconception, right? Where now there's a lot of Americans that do. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of Americans that are like, oh yeah, look, liberty and justice for all. But I would argue like most Americans know that's bullshit. But they're more just like, well, that's just how the world is, just the world is bullshit. and the problem is you grow up, so then you grow up and you have this philosophy in your head that like everything is just BS, and you're not motivated to like make the world better because you're like, why should I make the world better? Everything's just bullshit anyway, right? And that the author brings that out. I thought that was a good point. But she says like, hey, indigenous cultures, we had our own pledge that we did, and it was a pledge of gratitude. And this is long ass pledge where they're like thanking all the aspects of nature and parts of like the water and the river and the sky. Thank you so much. I thank the moon, and it's just this is very long. And by the time you're finished, you just like you feel the sense of gratitude. And then she just argues like, well, what if people just grew up with that? Like, we wouldn't be so much cynics. Like, we wouldn't be like, we would take hypocrisy as de facto, right? We would take gratitude as de facto, and we would like appreciate nature, right? If we were raised this way. It's fascinating. And Nadia says, in Canada, we had to stand to the national anthem every morning in school. Okay, so yeah, I guess all countries, or many countries have that. We have a line, home and native land in it, but many have pointed out that it should say home on native land. I know, right? Yeah, we got the same shit. I mean, America is the model that all other Western countries like Canada follow, right? So, yeah. We got our bullshit stuff. And of course, like what you're saying, like there's so many people there, like blah, 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 blah. But let me read some stuff. Imagine raising children in a culture in which gratitude is the first priority. You can't listen to the Thanksgiving address without feeling wealthy. And while expressing gratitude seems innocent enough, it is a revolutionary idea. In a consumer society, contentment is a radical proposition. Recognizing abundance rather than scarcity undermines an economy that thrives by creating unmet desires. So, when you recite this pledge, this mantra of gratitude, you're thanking all the aspects of nature. You realize, like, damn, we got a lot. We got water, we got air, we got the moon, we got the sky, we got like fruits, we got vegetables. And that defeats the whole idea of capitalism, where it's like resources are limited. You got to hoard. Make sure you get yours because you don't want other people to get yours. And and that's what she's saying. Like, if we just flipped the script and thought about things, see, this is where the philosophy comes in. Because, that's what I always say. Like, philosophy is, like, really how we change the world. Like, I mean, it's more to that. It requires action, too. But it's really, like, mental shifts that are what we have to do, right? It's like changes of framings of the mind, right? That's what we have to, from recognizing abundance rather than scarcity. Let's see. Gratitude cultivates an ethic of fullness, but the economy needs emptiness. The Thanksgiving address reminds you that you already have everything you need. And, I did a live stream about how scarcity is a myth. But that's like old news, right? But, a lot of people buy into this idea of scarcity. We have an overpopulation problem. We got to like colonize Mars. You got to get on, which is like, wow, we are so lost. Gratitude doesn't send you out shopping to find satisfaction. It comes as a gift rather than a commodity, subverting the foundation of the whole economy. That's good medicine for land and people alike. Okay, and it says, I just skipped the paragraph. The oratory is more than an economic model. It's a civics lesson too. Hearing the Thanksgiving address every day lifts up models of leadership for the young people. All right, so that's all what the author said. Like, this motivates people to make change. That's what I was talking about. Like, this is how we change the world for the better, right? Oh shit, how are we gonna change the world? Well, we gotta start realizing that, like we should be grateful for what nature provides us, and we gotta like push this, push the truth that scarcity is not a thing that actually is real. Right? We have more than enough resources for every human being on Earth. Like the problem is not a lack of resources. The problem is, uh, you know, uh, resources as profit, resources as commodity. That's the problem, right? Right. And then I'd say this is page 112, third paragraph. The Thanksgiving address is a reminder we cannot hear too often that we human beings are not in charge of the world, but are subject to the same forces as all of the rest of life. For me, the cumulative impact of the Pledge of Allegiance from my time as a schoolgirl to my adulthood was the cultivation of cynicism and a sense of the nation's hypocrisy. Yeah, that's what I was talking about before. Not the pride it was meant to instill. As I grew to understand the gifts of the earth, I couldn't understand how love of country could omit recognition of the actual country itself. The only promise it requires is a flag. What are the promises to each other and to the land? And I resonated a lot with that because as a young black boy, I also grew up like looking at the flag and being like, "Shit, that's bullshit." And so, like, yeah, I was, as many minority groups do, like, we're just like this, what the fuck, this like American dream? What the hell are you talking about? Like, this is just bullshit, right? And so, but the problem is, like, people stay in that mode of thinking, like they stay in that rut, and it's not so much their fault because because you're bombarded with like discrimination, exploitation, oppression, and cynicism, and is encouraged in our society. There's sitcom, this whole entertainment comedy is like promotes that kind of thinking, right? Uh, but we got, at some point you have to get out of that, and that's one of the things, the messages of this book. Like, you can't like get stuck in the rut of like, oh, fuck the world. Right? Life's a bitch and then you die. Like, at some point you have to get out of it. Right? Right. What would it be like to be raised on gratitude, to speak to the natural world as a member of the democracy of species, to raise a pledge of interdependence, not independence, interdependence, right? No declarations of political loyalty are required, just a response to a repeated question. Can we agree to be grateful for all that is given? In the Thanksgiving address, I hear respect toward all our non-human relatives, not one political entity, but to all of life. What happens to nationalism, to political boundaries, when allegiance lies with winds and waters that know no boundaries, that cannot be bought or sold? Like, I pledge allegiance to water. I pledge allegiance to air. Like, okay, what country is that from? Like, that's in all countries, right? So, the whole like nationalism crap goes out the window. Like, political boundaries, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. No, I pledge allegiance to plant life. The whole paradigm shift. And then Nadia says, for me, it was seeing all the white male prime ministers and presidents. I was a brown girl. Yep. I mean, shit. Same here. I guess the person that broke that for us was Obama. The first, but went back, people were like, no, we're going back. We're going back to white people, white old men as usual, which happened. Yeah. And like I see what you're saying. It's like you see like your leaders is like, that's not me. They don't care about me. They don't even know who I am. They could care less of who I am or what I need, because all they care about is like, their white old men concerns, right? Which is true. Like, some people will say like, oh, that's not fair. It's like, well, show me, disprove me. Like show me like, a white male prime minister that actually gave a fuck about indigenous people. Like, I would argue like, they all they care about is like, well, we gotta advance the interests of other white old men. uh, but anyway, this is page 113. Let's see. This is the bottom of the third paragraph. Not surprisingly, oh, I might butcher this. Haudenosani. Sorry. Decision making proceeds from consensus. Yep, they're from consent, not by a vote of the majority. A decision is made only when our minds are one. You know, consensus, not a majority rule. Imagine if our government meetings began with the Thanksgiving address. What if our leaders first found common ground before fighting over their differences? You know, I heard that. Imagine all the people. Well, no, not, let's not do the John Lennon song. Okay, page 115. This is third paragraph. The words are simple, but in the art of their joining, they become a statement of sovereignty, a political structure, a bill of responsibilities, an educational model, a family tree, a scientific inventory of ecosystem services. It is a powerful political document and a social contract, a way of being, all in one piece. But first and foremost, it is the credo for a culture of gratitude. Cultures of gratitude must also be cultures of reciprocity. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am in turn bound to support its life. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning a gift in kind. An integral part of humans' education is to know those duties and how to perform them. The Thanksgiving address reminds us that duties and gifts are two sides of the same coin. What is the duty of humans? If gifts are and responsibilities are one, then asking what is our responsibility is the same as asking what is our gift. It is said that only humans have the capacity for gratitude. This is among our gifts. Right? So that's how we, how do we deal with our fucked up society? By doing this right here. We're having reciprocal relationships. If you get clean water, then you should be like, okay, let me make sure that where I got the clean water, it remains clean, right? Let me do my due diligence to make sure that the source of the clean water remains clean, right? Or whatever. I get my food from this life form, then I need to make sure that the species of that life form prospers well, right? This reciprocal relationship, right? I breathe this air. Like I should make sure that the air that I'm breathing remains pure and clean, right? And so on and so forth, right? Yeah, and so it's a way of thinking, as opposed to like this consumer commodity culture. Like water is just a commodity. I'll just go to the store, buy a bottle of water, drink it, I'm done. Throw the plastic away. Game over, right? It's like, that's what's destroying us. And anybody could do this, right? It's not like I can't do that. Sure you can. Like, you can start by, like I said, with the bottled water, like maybe like stop with the plastic bottles. Just, that you could respect there. Or like, with the animal eating, like, okay, stop buying meat from factory farms. Respect the animal that's you're eating from. That you can do. And I know it's hard for some places than others, right? Because there's food deserts and such. But for example, Nadia knows about like food not bombs. What we try to do is we try to reduce food scarcity through mutual aid programs. And so, sometimes it's up to the more privileged people to step up to the plate and create resources for those with less privilege. We're trying to do that through our food not bombs endeavors. So these are things that we can implement to make a change for the better. Okay, and then this is page 124. We have here the second paragraph. Let's see. The exchange between plants and people has shaped the evolutionary history of both. Farms, orchards, and vineyards are stocked with species we have domesticated. Our appetite for their fruits leads us to till, prune, irrigate, fertilize, and weed on their behalf. Perhaps they have domesticated us. Wild plants have changed to stand in well behaved rows, and wild humans have changed to settle along the fields and care for the plants. A kind of mutual taming. We think like uh, because a lot of the plants that we grow for food exist because we need them. Like corn, for instance, I think she talks about how corn is um, a plant that we domesticated, right? And so like we mutually, and so now she's getting into like, well, how does um, humans mutually benefit nature, right? And she's talking about that here. We are linked in a co-evolutionary cycle. The sweeter the peach, the more frequently we disperse its seeds, nurture its young, and protect them from harm. Food, plants, and people act as selective forces on each other's evolution, the thriving of one in the best interest of the other. This, to me, sounds a bit like love. Love is mutual aid. That's what I wrote. What do you suppose would happen if the people believed this crazy notion that the earth loved them back? Oh yeah, yeah. I remember this part. She asked her students, or like she was in like a workshop or something with students, and she was asking like, "Does the earth love you?" And they're like, "Oh, what? The earth is an object; it doesn't love anything." But then she's like, "Well, let me change it. What do you suppose would happen if people believed this crazy notion that the earth loved them back?" And then, of course, like the people opened up because now they're kind of using their imagination. The floodgates opened. They all wanted to talk at once. We were suddenly off the deep end, heading for world peace and perfect harmony. One student summed it up: "You wouldn't harm what gives you love. Knowing that you love the earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond." So again, with the gift economy and like, you know, exchanging resources as a way of gifting each other and building relationships. If we treated nature in this way, we would respect nature. It's really just about building a relationship with nature. Like a relationship that's not objectified, like where we treat nature as a subject. That's part of the relationship. It's nature as a person. It's not like when you are in love with a person, then there's a sacred bond that happens, right? And that's what she's getting at. Like that's what we need to do, and we need to stop with the nature as this exploitative thing. Did I mark this incorrectly? We go on to the next one. Here we go. Okay, we continue. Page 132. This is the, let's see, fourth line. The organic symmetry of forms belongs together. The placement of every leaf, the harmony of shapes speak their message. Respect one another, support one another, bring your gift to the world, and receive the gifts of others, and there will be enough for all. Oh, and then now we're talking about the three sisters, which what Nadia brought up. The way of the three sisters reminds me of one of the basic teachings of our people. The most important thing each of us can know is our unique gift and how to use it in the world. Individuality is cherished and nurtured because in order for the whole to flourish, each of us has to be strong in who we are and carry our gifts with conviction so they can be shared with others. And that's like a huge theme here in the Black Ponderer. That's a huge um, philosophical concept that's pushed in many cultures throughout human history. The idea, like, you know, what's important is like discovering who you are and what you're capable of, and understanding what you can provide to this world. And I think figuring out what you can give to the world is the same thing as discovering who you are as a person, right? And the problem with society is we don't foster that. We don't. What our society does is we define who you are before you can even understand who you are. So you have this false sense of self, and when you have a false sense of self, you cannot give back to the world because you don't know the gifts that you can give, right? Because you have this made up, predefined notion of self, right? Being among the sisters provides a visible manifestation of what a what a community can become when its members understand and share their gifts. In reciprocity, we fill our spirits as well as our bellies. Mm-hmm. And then Nadia says, I grew the Three Sisters one summer. It worked so well. In 2021, the year I read this book. Excellent. Yeah, see, that's how you change. So, imagine maybe you do that again if you have the time and the resources, and then do the Food Not Bob's approach and start like distributing it to like food deserts and stuff. That would be cool. And then I wrote nature as a teacher. This is the top of page 135. Suddenly I understood their boredom. I was teaching from memory, drawing on images of plant lives that I had witnessed over the years. The green images I thought we shared as human beings were not theirs, thanks to the supplanting of gardens by supermarkets. The front row students had seen these things as well and wanted to know how such everyday miracles were possible. But most of the class had no experience of seeds and soil, had never watched a flower transform into an apple. They needed a new teacher. Yeah, so that's another thing. We gotta let nature be our teacher, as opposed to textbooks and scientists, Western science, right? Where it labs, where you gotta go out there and touch the grass, as they say. And again, we're not like saying science sucks, Western science, like science is great. I love science, but there's a limit that we need to acknowledge. The problem in our society is that we don't acknowledge the limits of science, right? And we think science can do everything, right? And then also science has just become this. Capitalism has co-opted science, and then maybe I would even go further and say capitalism hasn't co-opted science. Like capitalism has created this Western version of science as bastardized, what we learn in school, which teaches us to commodify and objectify everything, right? And understand the world through commodification, objectification, and exploitation, right? And it's sad. Right? And then Nadia says, our Funa Bombs has a garden in the summer. I bet they grow the Three Sisters. I hope to get involved in the garden next summer. Good thing to put on my resolution list. Yeah. See, this is how you get out of that rut of, the world is messed up. Climate change is going to destroy us. Armageddon, the Four Horsemen, the Judgment Day. Oh, no. It's like, just go get the Food Not Bob's garden. You might do that. You'd be like, oh, okay. Maybe we can prevent this from happening. And then I think that I'm a huge fan of the ripple effect of like more people will see that and they'll be motivated, right? They'll be motivated. They'll be like, and they'll change. I think that'll happen. But maybe I'm naive and too optimistic. But that's what I think. This is page 152, last paragraph. In weaving well-being for land and people, we need to pay attention to the lessons of the Three Sisters again. Ecological well-being and the laws of nature are always the first. Oh, I'm sorry. This is another topic. So the three rows. Ecological, well-being, and laws of nature are always the first row. Without them, there is no basket of plenty. Only if that first cycle is in place can we weave the second. The second reveals material welfare, the subsistence of human needs. Economy built upon ecology. But with only two rows in place, the basket is still in jeopardy of being pulled apart. So she's using this metaphor of weaving baskets because they went to like the author was part of this basket weaving workshop. And the thing about like it's more than a metaphor. Like indigenous people would like say like, no, this is a representation of life. Like this is how we should do it. Like you know, you gotta think even beyond the metaphorical sense and be like, you know, as nature as a teacher. Like nature is teaching us how we should live, right? You know, I guess parable style. You know. Here is where ecology, economics, and spirit are woven together. Ecology, economics, and spirit together, interwoven. By using materials as if they were a gift and returning that gift through worthy use, we find balance. I think that third row goes by the many names: respect, reciprocity, all our relations. I think of it as the spirit row. Whatever the name, the three rows represent recognition that our lives depend on one another. Human needs being only one row in the basket that must hold us all. In relationship, the separate splints become a whole basket, sturdy and resilient enough to carry us into the future. Nice. The three rows of the braid, I believe. Yep. All Our Relations, Finding the Path Forward. Also good book. Oh, cool. Some recommendations here. This is page 154. Fourth line of this third paragraph. What would it be like, I wonder, to live with that heightened sensitivity to the lives given for ours? To consider the tree in the Kleenex, the algae in the toothpaste, the oaks in the floor, and the grapes in the wine. To follow back the thread of life in everything and pay it respect. Once you start, it's hard to stop, and you begin to feel yourself awash in gifts. This is page 155, the fourth line. But I notice that my eyes and my thoughts pass quickly over the plastic on my desk. I hardly give the computer a second glance. I can muster no reflective moment for plastic. It is so far removed from the natural world. I wonder if that's a place where the disconnection began, the loss of respect, when we could no longer easily see the life within the object. And yet, I mean no respect for the diatoms and marine invertebrates who 200 million years ago lived well and fell to the bottom of an ancient sea, where under great pressure of a shifting earth they became oil that was pumped from the ground to a refinery where it was broken down and then polymerized to make the case of my laptop or the cap of the aspirin bottle. But being mindful in the vast network of hyper-industrialized goods really gives me a headache. We weren't made for that sort of constant awareness. We've got work to do, right? And the work to do is like recognizing the life within objects, or like and just seeing like this book. If we acknowledge like, this came from a tree, right? So it's like, thank you, tree, for providing the substance that put the text on the paper, that gave me the knowledge that it's gonna help me change, make the world a better place. The tree gave me that gift, right? And you might say like, oh, now you're getting all woo woo. And you're getting all like, hippy dippy. But I think if we thought like this, we'd be more appreciative about all things, and we wouldn't be so like, whatever, it's just a book, throw it away. Who cares? Books are, we wouldn't be so wasteful, and we wouldn't be so, nihilistic and cynical about things, All right, let's keep going. This is page 163. What's this? Third paragraph. We are all the product of our worldviews, even scientists who claim pure objectivity. Their predictions for Sweetgrass were consistent with their Western science worldview, which sets human beings outside of nature and judges their interactions with other species as largely negative. They had been schooled that the best way to protect a dwindling species was to leave it alone and keep people away. But the grassy meadows tell us that for Sweetgrass, human beings are part of the system, a vital part. Lori's findings, as a colleague of hers, the author, might have been surprising to academic ecologists, but were consistent with the theory voiced by our ancestors. I think that was actually a student, a graduate student that was under her, that she advised to get her PhD. If we use a plant respectfully, it will stay with us and flourish. If we ignore it, it will go away. And again, it's just an acknowledgement of the gift that nature gives us, and seeing nature as this person, and and it's just like there's so many things, like acknowledging that there's a relationship between nature and us, and it's a reciprocal relation, right? And if we don't acknowledge that, that's why we're going down this shithole of like environmental destruction, because we're not like seeing the world as it really is, like this reciprocal operation that happens between persons, non-human and human, right? Let's see here. Did I skip? Oh, I got it. Okay, let's keep going. 172, last paragraph, fourth line. It all depends on the temperature, and that's out of our hands. But that's not entirely true anymore. Our addiction to fossil fuel and current energy policies accelerate carbon dioxide input every year, unequivocally causing a global rise in temperatures. Spring comes nearly a week earlier than it did just 20 years ago. We are changing society, right? People don't changing, weather patterns and shit through our, industrial activity as a species. It looks like the maples will have to do just that. Like the displaced farmers in Bangladesh fleeing rising sea levels, maples will become climate refugees. To survive, they must migrate northward to find homes at the boreal fringe. Our energy policy is forcing them to leave. They will be exiled from their homelands for the price of cheap gas. We do not pay at the pump for the cost of climate change, for the loss of ecosystem services provided by maples and others. Cheap gas now, or maples for the next generation. Call me crazy, but I'd welcome the tax that would resolve that question. And now we're like getting to like, cheap commodities. It's like, yeah, but at what cost? At what cost? Environmental destruction. And it kind of brings me back to the whole idea of what happened with the election, the United States last United States presidential election. Now we got Trump back in office. Why? Why did people vote for Trump? And it's more just like, well, under Trump, we had cheap gas. Under Trump, everything was a little less expensive. And it's like, yeah, but okay, but a lot of people are going to lose their rights, and a lot of minorities are going to be more in danger. And there's going to be a lot more environmental destruction, and I mean, what about the cost of that? Completely ignored. Completely like, oh, yeah. It's like, we're acknowledging one cost, like cheap gas, but what about like the future of the next generation? Like that's just out the window, right? I think about that when she talks about this too. Individuals far wiser than I have said that we get the government we deserve. That may be true, but the maples are most generous of benefactors and most responsible of citizens do not deserve our government. They deserve you and me speaking up on their behalf, right? That's what they deserve. That's what I like to call bullshit as I see it. Like, yeah, cheap get, this idea, like, well, my business, I'm gonna, I own a small business and it's gonna be more successful with this douchebag as president. Yeah, but what about like all the trees and all the rivers that are gonna get all fucked up, and like all the people from that live in countries that are close to the shoreline who are gonna have to move away, or like even here in the United States in Florida, and the very people that voted for that jackass are gonna experience more hurricanes that are gonna displace them, and then they're gonna move to the Midwest because that's where they're gonna what about those people, and that's what they deserve. That's another way to make the world better. Speak up. Speak loud and proud and be like, hey man, and be fortunate you live in a country where you can do that. Fortunately, here in America, you still can criticize government and like the status quo, where like there's other countries like Russia and China where you can't do that shit. They'll throw you in prison. So that's what I'm saying. Like the privileged need to step up. Like people who have privileges, we need to like, okay, it's time for us to like put a little bit more effort into this, or it's gonna go really bad real fast. So, yeah. Let's see here. We'll keep going. We'll see how long. We might end it at the 2-hour mark, but we'll see. Because as you see, I'm like not even halfway done. These videos are teasers. These are teasers. Definitely, like if I made a video, it would have been a lot shorter than this. But last video I made was an hour and a half with the Immanuel Kant's critique of practical reason. So hey, there's that. This is page 176, fourth paragraph, fourth line. Sometimes I wish I could photosynthesize so that just by shimmering at the meadow's edge or floating lazily on a pond, I could be doing the work of the world while standing silent in the sun. And I skip down 3 lines. It would be so satisfying to provide for the well-being of others, like being a mother again, like being needed. Shade, medicine, berries, roots. There would be no end to it. As a plant, I could make the campfire hold the nest, heal the wound, fill the brimming pot. But this generosity is beyond my realm. I am a mere heterotroph, a feeder on the carbon transmuted by others. In order to live, I must consume. That's the way the world works. The exchange of a life for a life. The endless cycling between my body and the body of the world. Forced to choose, I must admit I actually like my heterotroph role. And it's just acknowledging the reciprocity of life, and how like, look, nature is gifting you, to make this book. For example, a tree had to die, and a life ended. And you might, again, like there's this notion of it's just a tree, but she's just saying, look, can we appreciate that? The problem is we live in a society where people are just like, it's just a tree, it's just like, who cares, but it's like, no, that does mean something. So because of that, we need to be more respectful and treat these things as gifts, as gifts, whatever it may be. Even the cell phone, like she was talking about how like, the oil was polymerized to create the cell phone, and these are gifts. And so we need to treat nature with more like, like, hey, we actually should give a damn about nature, because nature is providing us with a lot of like things that help us, right? And so you'll go down this fool's thinking of like, well, no, nature has nothing to do with it. It's man's ingenuity. Man is, we're so highly intelligent. We have bended nature to our will, and we have engineered our way of life, and it has nothing to do with nature. But it's all, and that's that kind of thinking is what's destroying us as a species. It really is a way of thinking that is destroying us. So we just need to shift, and that's why this book is so good, because it's saying like, look, we thought this way before, we just lost it. We got to return back to it. I put in my notes, we are naturally predisposed for mutual aid, like I was saying. Like mutual aid by simply existing. This is our mutual state, right? So we exist because nature provides for us, and we provide for nature, right? That's how we are existing. Like, there's this false sense of like, no, we're existing because it's a dog eat dog world and survival of the fittest, and the winners on top, the losers at the bottom. Like, no, that's not. That is a fabrication, and that's like some fantasy, some patriarchal like capitalist fantasy. That's actually not how the world really functions. It's just like this lie that we tell ourselves, and so like that's why we're being, there's so much suffering in the world, because the lie is like we're modeling society off of a lie, and it's not like it's not like compatible. So like there's a lot of damage caused by that, right? We have lost our mutual state. We live in unnatural state of exploiting. It destroys us. That's what I wrote. But let's continue with what the author writes. This is page 177, second paragraph, third line. If we are fully awake, a moral question arises as we extinguish the other lives around us on behalf of our own. Whether we are digging wild leeks or going to the mall, how do we consume in a way that does justice to lives that we take? Mm-hmm. How do we live in a world? How do we live that does justice to the tree that had to die to make this book? How we should live? How should we live in such a world, right? And then our ancestors who had so few material possessions devoted a great deal of attention to this question, while we who are drowning in possessions scarcely give it a thought, right? So, back in the day when material possessions wasn't so much of a thing, like there was deep philosophical consideration for these questions. But now it's like we're surrounded by commodities and we don't even think about this at all. And so my point is like that's why the world has gone to shit, right? And we need to get back to like that kind of thinking, right? Because then we'll be less wasteful and more appreciative. Right? The cultural landscape may have changed, but the conundrum has not. The need to resolve the inescapable tension between honoring life around us and taking it in order to live is part of being human, right? And so this is a philosophical tension. Like this is this is an issue of philosophy. Like this is part of the human experience is like this is something that we need to wrestle with and reconcile and like confront. Like how do we deal with this, right? And the answer she gives is like we got to treat things as gifts, or we got to like give back. Right? That's how we deal with this. But we've lost that philosophy completely, right? And this is the gift that's the gift that this book is giving us, right? I would argue. And Nadia is having a great time. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm having a good time too with this book. This is page 180. Collectively, the indigenous canon of principles and practices that govern the exchange of life for life is known as the honorable harvest. They are rules of sorts that govern our taking, shape our relationships with the natural world, and rein in our tendency to consume, that the world might be as rich for the seventh generation as it is for our own. Mutual aid, baby. We're finally like, I guess the baby boomers, I guess maybe we're the last generation. Maybe Generation X, probably not. The baby boomers were like, they say like that's the last generation. They've left the world each generation left the world a little better than the previous. Right? Whereas like now we're starting to see a world that's worse, right? With the climate change and like the social inequities going backwards and things like that. Social equality like starting to diminish, and so we need to go back to like, okay, how can I make the world better, as opposed to like, look, all I give a fuck about is my bank account and my immediate circle of family, and who cares about the rest of the world? Like, no, we need to think bigger than this. Right? And then Nadia says, this is why I love camping. You realize how little you need and appreciate wholly what you have. You become more engaged with the world around you with fewer distractions. Yeah, I like camping too. Camping. And also, so there's that. I also like camping because I'm able to like develop a deeper relationship with nature, which is like nature becomes a friend, is a buddy, right? As opposed to like separate and apart, right? That's another cool thing about camping. And then I continue on the second paragraph here. As a human being who cannot photosynthesize, I must struggle to participate in the honorable harvest. So I lean in close to watch and listen to those who are far wiser than I am. What I share here, in the same way they were shared with me, are seeds gleaned from the fields of their collective wisdom. I feel grateful for their teachings and responsible for passing them on as best I can. And what did I put here? Learn from nature and indigenous wisdom. Yeah. Let's keep going. Well, we'll just keep going there. There's so much more. I don't know if I could keep going. This is. We'll see. We'll see how far we go. Let me know. I'll stop anytime. But I'm sure, like, if you wanted to dip, you could just dip. You'd be like, I'll just go now. But I'll just keep going. Page 185. This is the third paragraph, second to last line. What about when something is taken without a clear avenue for mutual benefit? When someone is going to lose? How can we distinguish between that which is given by the earth and that which is not? When does taking become outright theft? I think my elders would counsel that there is no one path, that each of us must find our own way. In my wandering with this question, I found dead ends and clear openings. Discerning all that it might mean is like bushwhacking through dense undergrowth. Sometimes I get faint glimpses of a deer trail. Wrestling with that. And this is the bottom of page 186. The honorable harvest does not ask to photosynthesize. It does not say don't take, but offers inspiration and a model for what we should take. It's not so much a list of do nots as a list of do's. Do eat food that is honorably harvested and celebrate every mouthful. Do use technology that minimize harm. Do take what is given. This philosophy guides not only our taking of food, but also any taking of the gifts of Mother Earth, air, water, and the literal body of the earth, the rocks and soil and fossil fuels. Taking coal buried deep in the earth, for which we must inflict irreparable damage, violates every precept of the code. By no stretch of the imagination is coal given to us. We have to wound the land and water to gorge it from Mother Earth. What if a coal company planning mountaintop removal in the ancient folds of the Appalachians were compelled by law to take only that which is given? The idea of oil is there. You should just take it, right? Of course you've heard that one. It's like it's so much oil reserves. You should just take it. Like, why? That's a waste. It's a waste to just not take that. But she's saying like, look what you have to do to take it. Like, the amount of environmental damage that has to be done to take that oil out. Like, it's all again. She's like, you got to see nature, what it gives to us as a gift, not a commodity. If you see it as a gift, you're like, well, obviously, like that's not a gift. We're actually destroying the environment to get that. Like, rather, we should be the resources we should be getting from nature are ones that are like given to us, not things that we just like aggressively like pillage, right? Right. So I like that way of thinking. And it says it doesn't mean that we can't consume the energy we need, but it does mean that we honorably take only what is given. The wind blows every day. Every day the sun shines. Every day the waves roll against the shore and the earth is warm below us. We can understand these renewable sources of energy as given to us, since they are the sources that have powered life on the planet for as long as there has been a planet. Right? It's like mic drop right there. It's like, hello, like sunlight has always been wind. We need not destroy the earth to make use of them. Solar, wind, geothermal, and tidal energy, the so-called clean energy, quote unquote, harvests when they are wisely used, seem to me to be consistent with the ancient rules of the honorable harvest. And the code might ask of any harvest, including energy, that our purpose be worthy of the harvest. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. Where am I at? And then, and this is page 190, second paragraph. The honorable harvest asks us to give back in reciprocity for what we have been given. Reciprocity helps resolve the moral tension of taking a life by giving in return something of value that sustains the ones who sustain us. One of our responsibilities as human people is to find ways to enter in reciprocity with the more than human world. We can do it through gratitude, through ceremony, through land stewardship, science, art, and everyday acts of practical reverence. And so that's a way that we can defeat the whole like depressive existential crisis that a lot of people have. They're like, oh fuck, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. I'm just by being a human being, I'm destroying nature. This sucks. I can't. This spiral that goes deeper and deeper into despair. And it's like, well, you're not necessarily an agent of environmental destruction just because you're a human being. That's the system we're in. And you don't have to, there's ways that you can deal with that, right? You can deal with that, right? Because, human beings consume. That's what we do. So just know like, oh, okay, life is a gift. I live by consuming, and so I should give back. And how do you give back? Like, what Nadia's saying, like, do that Three Sisters, plant a harvest, grow some plants, and don't just grow the plants, like grow them, and be a steward of the land, make the land that you're growing on. Have it healthy and provide for other people too. By maybe you give some of that food that you're growing to other people. And that's just one way of doing it. There's all types of ways you can just. There's many ways that you can give to people and to that is environmentally beneficial to humans and nature. And that's where the imagination comes in. But you don't have to imagine too far because the indigenous people have been doing this for centuries already, or millennia, right? So just follow their model. And this is page 195. Cities are like mitochondria in our animal cells. They are consumers, fed by the autotrophs, the photosynthesis of a distant green landscape. We can lament that urban dwellers have little means of exercising direct reciprocity with the land. Yet while city folks may be separated from the sources of what they consume, they can exercise reciprocity through how they spend their money. While the digging of the leaks and the digging of the coal may be too far removed to see, we consumers have a potent tool of reciprocity right in our pockets. We can use our dollars as the indirect currency of reciprocity. So this is a way we can deal with that conundrum, right? Perhaps we could think of the honorable harvest as a mirror by which we judge our purchases. What do we see in the mirror? A purchase worthy of the lives consumed? Dollars become a surrogate, a proxy for the harvester with hands in the earth, and they can be used in support of the honorable harvest or not. And let's just talk about like what will you go to when you buy your food? Do you go to a big chain grocery store, owned by a corporation, or maybe you instead go to a farmer's market? That kind of thinking. That, or do you buy your art locally, or do you go buy it at IKEA? That kind of stuff. It can be too easy to shift the burden of responsibility to the coal company of the land developers. What about me, the one who buys what they sell? Who is complicit in the dishonorable harvest? So, we can participate. I need to blow my nose right quick. So I'm going to put on mute for a few seconds so you don't hear that nastiness. I do this. Okay. We back. Yeah. Cool. Okay, where are we at here? We'll keep going. Let's see. I think the last stream was 2 hours 30 minutes, wasn't it? So I could keep going. And then I have done a 3 hour plus stream. So okay, we'll keep going. This is page 207, and this is about an indigenous creation story called Nana Bozho or Bozho. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that, but it's like the original man, the first man. That's what it translates to. And it's talking about how the first man walked among the earth, and how the first man learned the ways of how to live on earth. And this is page 207, and this is the fourth paragraph, third line. The problem with these new people is that they don't have both feet on the shore. One is still on the boat. They don't seem to know whether they're staying or not. This same observation is heard from some contemporary scholars who see the social pathologies and relentlessly materialist culture of the fruit of homelessness a rootless past. America has been called the home of second chances. For the sake of the peoples and the land, the urgent work of the second man may be to set aside the ways of colonists and become indigenous to place. But can Americans as a nation of immigrants learn to live here as we were staying with both feet on the shore? What happens when we truly become native to a place when we finally make home? Where are the stories that lead the way? Let's see here. Consider the original instructions and understood. Wait, might have. Oh, okay. Let me complete that sentence. And so he's talking about the first man. The author, she's talking about the Nana Bosho. He considered the original instructions. The original instructions is the idea of like you give what you take. Life is reciprocal. Learn to mutual aid. Learn to exist via mutual aid. And understood that all the knowledge he needed in order to live was present in the land. His role was not to control or change the world as a human, but to learn from the world how to be human. And I skipped to the end of 208. Philosophers call this state of isolation and disconnection species loneliness, a deep, unnamed sadness stemming from estrangement from the rest of creation, from the loss of relationship. As our human dominance of the world has grown, we have become more isolated, more lonely when we can no longer call out to our neighbors. It's no wonder the naming was the first job the creator gave Nana Bozo. And that's the creator is like the deity, the God figure, who and when is interesting, like a lot of these creation stories, just like Adam, from the Christian story of creation, where like Adam, one of his first jobs was naming all of nature, or like all the animals. But as we really know, like all these creation myths are just derived from each other. Really, maybe hardcore fundamentalist Christians would disagree with that, but a thorough study of like history and anthropology, well, you'll come to that conclusion. And here we have the creator is giving the first man, his responsibility was naming a species. And so by doing that, you form relationships with people, right? And today, like, our relationship skills, the ability to form relationships with not only nature but just each other has definitely diminished, which is why we're so bad, which is why despair has run rampant in our society. And then this is page 210, third paragraph, third line. He'd been instructed that if he could combine the lessons from nature with the strength of his own good mind, he could discover new things that would be useful for the people to come. And then this is the top of page 211, second line. To carry a gift is also to carry a responsibility. And so I like this story. And so to sum it up, like this particular part, I'm going to page 214. This is the last paragraph, second line. To strive to become naturalized to place, to throw off the mindset of the immigrant. Being naturalized to place means to live as if this is the land that feeds you, as if these are the streams from which you drink, that build your body and fill your spirit. To become naturalized is to know that your ancestors lie in this ground. Here you will give your gifts and meet your responsibilities. To become naturalized is to live as if your children's future matters. To take care of the land as if our lives and the lives of all our relatives depend on it, because they do. And so the point of this story we got to learn to be indigenous in place. We got to become indigenous people. What does that mean? Naturalized meaning, we in this society where people are, this globalization has become a thing, and people just move all over. I moved myself. I'm from California. I moved to Tennessee, and people will just move, and nobody. There's this idea nowadays in modern society, particularly in industrialized countries, where if you don't like a place, you just move and just develop somewhere else, and you just like these nomads, right? And so I know there's even the saying, this new thing called digital nomads, right, where people have jobs and they just work from a laptop and they just go all over the place. The whole trendy thing now, the van life, right? Where people live in their vans and they just go places, and this has become like this whole Um, and so like cultural phenomena of just this constant moving, and there's this idea of like I don't like society or I don't like current the world, so I'm just gonna like go off and do my own thing. But we've lost so much through that, right? We have to go back to like if we don't like the way things are, we have to bunker down and we have to like make it, when a relationship goes sour, sometimes you really do need to cut off a relationship. But sometimes, you have to like a home is something you build up. Like a relationship has to be developed, right? Like, yeah, you don't just like, oh, I don't like this, I'm moving on, right? Uh, there's this idea like shit, like in America, right? Like I don't like America, I'm going to Canada, right? That's like a common thing in America. Then you go to Canada, you're like, oh fuck, it's not good here either. So you just move to like the Netherlands or whatever. It's like, oh shit, that the Netherlands just got a right wing president. Oh shit, let me go to like Hawaii or whatever. You just keep moving around. But you know, I like this notion. Like, I resonate deeply with this because as somebody who moved from California, which is a blue state, blue American state, although it has a lot of problems, social inequities in California. Don't get it twisted. But then I moved to this red state, which is, where this state is so fucking backwards. It boggles the mind. But I just personally, I'm like, no, I'm gonna be like Nana Bosho. Right? I'm gonna form a relationship with the land. The original indigenous land, which is Chickasaw, Chickasaw land, right? And that's something we like to do here. People who, that's a trend now, and I think that's a good trend. Acknowledging the indigenous people of this land, the Chickasaw land. I'm gonna start like, you know what? This is bad for queer people. Let's start making safe spaces for queer people. This is bad for black people. You know what? Let's start like forming community centers and education programs, and like let's divert away from policing and into like other methods of providing safety. We got all these food deserts. Let's start making mutual aid programs here. I'm like, fuck it. I'm not just gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna like fight this shit. I'm gonna fight this shit. I'm gonna form a relationship with this land. And I think that's another thing that we need to start doing. We gotta kind of take ownership with the relationship we have with the land that we are in. We have to be naturalized. We have to be indigenous in place, right? The whole like I'm just this nomad type of thing, and if shit gets horrible, I'm out. Like that's also destroying us, right? Because there's lots of people who can't go out. This that only goes so far. Again, like that's kind of I'm speaking from a perspective of privilege, right? Like, so I can bunker down. Some people like they gotta go. It's just too dangerous. Like refugees and stuff like that. Yeah, no, I get it. That's why I said before, like people who have privileges, we need to like step up to the plate. This is it's our time. We can't. We gotta like take the brunt of this. We gotta be like, you know what? No, the buck stops here, right? And of course, like we're gonna protect our people who are suffering, right? But some of us had to just bunker down, and be like, I will not accept this shit anymore. I'm gonna help my fellow human being, and I'm gonna help my fellow tree, my fellow plant, my fellow animals, and that's one of the lessons here in this book as well. But let's move on. Page 222, second paragraph. This is the sixth line. I came to know that it wasn't naming the source of wonder that mattered. It was the wonder itself. Right? And this is the The third paragraph, colonized by the arrogance of science, I had been fooling myself that I was the only teacher. The land is the real teacher. All we need as students is mindfulness. Paying attention is a form of reciprocity with the living world. Receiving the gifts with open eyes and open heart. My job was just to lead them into the presence and ready them to hear. And then I skip down 5 lines. A teacher comes, they say, when you are ready. And if you ignore its presence, it will speak to you more loudly. But you have to be quiet to hear. So again, like, the teachers are nature. And like she said first, the source of wonder, it wasn't like the source of, it's the wonder itself. Nature will be like, wow, that's so cool. That in and of itself is a great teacher, right? And so when we're in despair, we're like, oh shit, how the fuck are we going to deal with the world as it is today? Let's listen to nature. Nature has something to teach us. But, we in this westernized scientific world are like, what? No. Like, it's all about human cognition. Like, that's the only teacher. And that's why, and then we don't get those answers that we need, and we're just like in despair. Well, we need to expand our scope of what is a teacher. And then Nadia says, I love this concept of being naturalized. I find that off-grid influencers who are privileged, who fled to live off-grid, have a tinge of selfishness. Yeah, I would agree. I think, like, not to judge, but I think if you have the privilege to do that, go find yourself. You might need to do that for a little bit, but then it's time to come back. It's like, famously, like James Baldwin, he left America and went to France to write, Giovanni's Room. And one of these days I would do a video off of his works, because he writes some good books. Giovanni's Room, and all these books that he could not, there's no way he could have written those books in America. So that's good. But then eventually he's like, I need to come back. Because I got to do something about this shit. I got to do something about it. He just felt like there was a responsibility that he felt. And I think, like, the van life, they need to be like, okay, why the hell did I leave? Like, maybe I could do something to help other people, by, like, there needs to be a return. It's funny because, some of those old ass white philosophers felt like Nietzsche with his, like, the concept of the Oberman or the Superman. That he goes off into the mountains and becomes like the Overman, and then he returns to help try and, like, spread the word. But that's an old concept. The Buddha did that. Like, the Buddha reached enlightenment, then the gods were like, can you just go back and teach other people how to reach enlightenment? And so he went back. And I think that's important. That's important to do that. Okay, and 239 is a page. This is the end of the second paragraph. This is our work, to discover what we can give. Isn't this the purpose of education? To learn the nature of your own gifts and how to use them for good in the world? And I skip down 3 lines. The circle of ecological compassion we feel is enlarged by direct experience of the living world and shrunken by its lack. True that. Nadia says, I love James Baldwin. I read a book about how he had to flee to Paris in order to write about, Begin Again, America and its urgent lessons. It's true. So, when we go back to van life, sometimes people do need to just be like, I just gotta, like, figure shit out. I gotta figure shit out. So you do that, but ultimately that's not the answer. Right? All right, that's not how the world becomes better, right? You gotta, like, return, and that's hard. But it's work. It's what we gotta do, the good work. This is page 248, 4th paragraph. It is an odd dichotomy we have set for ourselves between loving people and loving land. We know that loving a person has agency and power. We know it can change everything, yet we act as if loving the land is an internal affair that has no energy outside the confines of our head and heart. And then this is page 249, fourth paragraph. Ceremony focuses attention so that attention becomes intention. If you stand together and profess a thing before your community, it holds you accountable. Ceremonies transcend the boundaries of the individual and resonate beyond the human realm. These acts of reverence are powerfully pragmatic. These are ceremonies that magnify life. And then we skip down 2 lines. In a dominant society, though, ceremony seems to have withered away. I suppose there are many reasons for that: a frenetic pace of life, disillusion of community, the sense that ceremony is an artifact of organized religion forced upon participants rather than a celebration joyfully chosen. Mm-hmm. And then this is page 250, the end of the 3rd paragraph. Can we extend our bonds of celebration and support from our own species to others who need us? And so, yeah, the point of celebration or ceremony, or like spiritual ceremony in indigenous cultures, was a celebration of the relationship between human beings and the rest of nature. And we need to get back to that. We need to get back to the acknowledging that we have a relationship between the rest of nature. And, our relationship between nature is not limited to an exploitative one, right? Or like an objectified one, right? Where it's more than that. I like a lot of van lifers. Are not considering that they need to come back and are just focusing on themselves. I know, right? That's a problem. And I've seen several. The ones I've seen. It's so interesting because the ones I've seen, I don't know. I don't watch all of them, many of them, but I've seen. Sometimes I'm curious and I scan their YouTube channels, and eventually they'll come to a point. It's so interesting. They'll come to a point where they'll be like, van life is over. I'm gonna stop van life because I'm not finding the answers, and the ones I've seen. It's never like it never is like they do the van life and then they just keep doing it until for the rest of their lives. It's more like it's not even that long. Maybe it's like maybe a year or a year and a half, and they're like, no, I need to, I'm gonna go back to society, and I'm gonna because that's not the answer. Like, why? Because you need relationship. You need a sense of permanency, or you need a sense of permanent relationship. That's a loving, permanent relationship with self and the rest of the world. And one could argue I actually get that through van life. But really you don't if you are just constantly on the move and you never stop. It's like it's hard to form a lasting relationship, right? And that's what human beings need, that, right? Even if you're an introvert or whatever, that's just a need. And it's not just a human need, all living beings need, right? And not even just living beings, right? Inanimate objects relate to each other, right? It's crazy. So, it's just a refusal of acknowledging how existence actually functions. It's crazy. Yeah, totally. They completely remove themselves from community, and then the other YouTube community, which isn't fulfilling. That's another thing. And it's interesting because they'll have this YouTube channel, which is that's their way of trying to compensate, because you gotta have some sort of community. Right? So they're like, yeah, so I'm gonna try and do YouTube, because that's what happens. I need community, so I reach out for YouTube. The problem is YouTube commodifies community, right? So again, you have this relationship of this like community becomes this commodity product, and and it's exploitative thing, right? And so that doesn't last long either. Right? It's so fascinating. And then this is page 258, fourth paragraph. When a language dies, so much more than words are lost. And this is talking about the erasure of native languages, indigenous languages, back when, those, schools that were set up in the early European colonizers' days that, tried to eliminate indigenous cultures and, succeeded largely. Still, fortunately, there's still some people have survived and they're pushing, but it's tough going, right? And so that's what the author's talking about here. When a language dies, so much more than words are lost. Language is a dwelling place of ideas that do not exist anywhere else. It is a prism through which to see the world. Even words as basic as numbers are imbued with layers of meaning. And then on page 259, second line, a place becomes a home when it sustains you. This is another topic. When it feeds you in body as well as spirit, right? That's what a home is what sustains you, right? So van life ain't happening. But yeah, back to the language. Yeah, that's a language is a way of seeing the world, right? And so going back to English, you're kind of the whole seeing all subjects only as humans and everything else is an object, right? That's what English, you see the world through that. But indigenous cultures, they saw it otherwise because their languages were more they created subjectivity with non-human beings, right? And then residential and day schools in Canada, the last residential school went until 1997. Yeah, I hear recently, relatively speaking, Canada has, because, the stereotype of Canada is oh yeah, Canada is great. It's a great place to live. It's very socially equitable, which probably is way better than America, right? But America, the bar is extremely low. I'm not saying there's worse places, because there's definitely worse places. We can go there, but if you're using America as a bar, your bar is pretty low. So yeah, but now Canada, is kind of coming to the reconciling. Oh yeah, we're actually kind of fucked up too. We are always finding more unmarked graves of dozens of children remains. Yeah, welcome to the horrible club. Horrible club to be a member of. Countries that have massacred indigenous peoples. Horrible. 272 page. This is third paragraph. When times are easy and there's plenty to go around, individual species can go it alone. But when conditions are harsh and life is tenuous, it takes a team sworn to reciprocity to keep life going forward. In a world of scarcity, interconnection and mutual aid become critical for survival. And I would argue now it's kind of getting that time, okay, we, particularly here in America, it's time to unleash the mutual aid, because social equity is gonna go pretty shitty, right? So mutual aid is here to help. I think Canada is cited as being worse than the U.S. for indigenous cultural genocide due to our residential schools. Well, I'm sorry that your country has that title, because the United States of America is absolutely horrible in that domain. So to be worse than us, whew, I'm sorry. That's rough. Page 275, second paragraph. These ancients carry teaching in the ways that they live. They remind us of the enduring power that arises from mutualism, from the sharing of the gifts carried by each species. Balanced reciprocity has enabled them to flourish under the most stressful conditions. Their success is measured not by consumption and growth, but by graceful longevity and simplicity, by persistence while the world changed around them. It is changing now. While lichens can sustain humans, people have not returned the favor of caring for lichens. So now she's talking about species that these species that are like they have this reciprocal like dual relationship. It's I forgot what it's like. Two species. It's a moss and it's a fungi. I think it's a fungus and a moss, and they merge together in this like what they call it this mutual, I forgot, symbiotic relationship, and it's so integrated that it essentially they just become a new species, a new singular species, and it's fascinating. So she's talking about this phenomena, these lichens who are actually two species, but they're so symbiotic that they basically are one species. Amblicaria, like many lichens, is highly sensitive to air pollution. When you find Amblicaria, you know you're breathing the purest air. Atmospheric contaminants like sulfur dioxide and ozone will kill it outright. Pay attention when it departs. So again, nature, letting you know. Our indigenous herbalists say to pay attention when plants come to you. They're bringing you something you need to learn. For millennia, these lichens have held the responsibility of building up life in an eye blink of Earth's history. We have set about undermining their work to usher in a time of great environmental stress and barrenness of our own making. I suspect a lichen will endure. We could too if we listened to their teachings. Again, nature is the teacher. If not, I imagine Amblicaria will cover the rocky ruins of our time long after our delusions of separateness have relegated us to fossil record, a ruffled green skin adorning the crumbling halls of power. So, the thing is, like, if human beings go extinct, like, nature will continue. The earth will continue. It's just, it's about our survival. We got to recognize that separateness, this independence, is a delusion. It's not real. Like, the dog eat dog world, the exploitation, the big shark, big fish, small pond type of crap, the zero sum game that is like life, that people want to tell you that's what life is not true, right? And if we keep buying into this lie, we're going to destroy ourselves. Now, life will continue, but we'll be gone. So that's the question. The thing is, we just got to learn from nature. The harsh post-glacial world in which you began may well become our own unless we listen to the wisdom carried in the mutualistic marriage of your bodies. Redemption lives in knowing that you might also hear our hymns of joy when we too marry ourselves to the earth, right? When we acknowledge a symbiotic relationship between human beings and earth. Page 300, second paragraph, second line. I suppose that's the way we humans are, thinking too much and listening too little. Paying attention acknowledges that we have something to learn from intelligences other than our own. Listening, standing witness, creates an openness to the world in which the boundaries between us can dissolve. All right. Listen. Listen, like Navy in The Legend of Zelda. No. This is 308, third paragraph. The fear for me is far greater than just acknowledging the Wendigo within. Okay, so yeah, this is the Indigenous story about the Wendigo, which is a basically like a zombie creature I've heard of the Wendigo before, right? This is a mythical creature, but I didn't realize it was indigenous. Yeah, this creature that has like overconsumed a person that has like overconsumed and just has just lost completely like the understanding of like reciprocity and just completely indulges in like uh, just consumption, and so they becomes this monster, right? The fear for me is that the world has been turned inside out, the dark side made to seem light. Indulgent self interest that our people once held to be monstrous is now celebrated as success. We are asked to admire what our people viewed as unforgivable. The consumption driven mindset masquerades as quality of life, but eats us from within. It is as if we've been invited to a feast, but the table is laid with food that nourishes only emptiness, the black hole of the stomach that never fills. We have unleashed the monster. Like what we were just saying, like capitalism and like the idea like you should strive to be a billionaire. Build that. If, as what's continuously said, a billionaire only exists because so many people have been exploited, and labor people. There's so many laborers that have like not have justly been compensated for the work that they do. Right, that's how billionaires exist. Right, and we strive for this. We strive for exploitation, and like we want to be the big dog on top, and it's just destroying us. Right, and we become this Wendigo. Right, and so like again, it's like an indigenous parable that's trying to teach us a lesson, and we're just ignoring it. And that's to like what was brought up here with the residential and day schools in Canada, where it's just erasure. But it's we can still thank God for authors like this and authors like her and several others who are bringing us knowledge and like helping us remember. This is page 325, third to last line. And the people of the city allowed it to happen. Interviews with Solvay workers tell the typical story. I was just doing my job. I had a family to feed, and I wasn't going to worry about what happened out there on the waste beds. Philosopher Joan Marcy writes of the oblivion we manufacture for ourselves to keep us from looking environmental problems straight in the eye. She quotes R.J. Clifton, a psychologist studying human response to catastrophe. Suppression of our natural responses to disaster is part of the disease of our time. The refusal to acknowledge these responses causes a dangerous splitting. It divorces our mental calculations from our intuitive, emotional, and biological embeddedness in the matrix of life. The split allows us passively to acquiesce in the preparations of our own demise. And what's that? That's like the cynicism, and like us like saying like, oh, life's just bullshit anyway, who cares? And we see like all these travesties like, oh well, that's life. But if we're like, wait, let's put the brakes on here, let's put the brakes, and that's what we're saying, right? Okay, page 328, third line. So far the if-then formula isn't working. People do know the consequences of our collective damage. They do know the wages of an extra active economy, but they don't stop. They get very sad. They get very quiet. So quiet that protection of the environment that enables them to eat and breathe and imagine a future for their children doesn't even make it onto a list of their top 10 concerns. Toxic waste dumps, the melting glaciers, and the litany of doomsday projections. They move anyone who is still listening only to despair. Despair is paralysis. It robs us of agency. It blinds us to our own power and the power of the earth. Environmental despair is a poison. But how can we submit to despair while the land is saying help? Restoration is a powerful antidote to despair. Restoration offers concrete means by which humans can once again enter into positive, creative relationships with the more than human world, meeting responsibilities that are simultaneously material and spiritual. It's not enough to grieve. It's not enough to just stop doing bad things. And then I skip a paragraph. How we approach restoration of land depends, of course, on what we believe that land means. Here we go, philosophy. If land is just real estate, then restoration looks very different than if land is the source of a subsistence economy and a spiritual home. Spiritual home. That's what land is. Restoring land for production of natural resources is not the same as renewal of land as cultural identity. So cultural identity, this is what we're talking about. Naturalization, like indigenous in place. Like, this is my home. This is who I am. And you're not going to take that away from, you got to take a stand, right? We have to think about what land means, right? Land is not commodity product. Land is not real estate. Land is a relationship between it's a relationship, right? It's a relationship of love and and meaning, right? Let's see here. And I say I'm also reading this as anxiety and depression, which I have. Oh, I kind of know our normal responses to the capitalist culture that we live in. But rather than taking drugs and engaging in individualist therapy, engaging in community work and acts of reciprocity is the answer. So feeling these real and understandable emotions is needed rather than ignoring them as problems with ourselves, but problems with society instead. Yeah, no. They are the result of our fucked up society and what we think is normal. Yep, that's true. And yeah, they're just symptoms of a fucked up society. Yeah, so what you're saying, yeah, that's very important to think about. Like, oh, you're the problem. You need to go, take some pills, and once you get your mind straight with the medication, then you can start your own business and become an entrepreneur and like get a job as a broker, stockbroker, or work for a Fortune 500 company and you'll be successful. Right? And it's like, no, that doesn't, no. Right? No, the therapy is, yes, medicine is part of that, but also like, our frame, the way we think about our environment and our society, and like not associating value with commodities, right? Associating value with the relationships we have with each other, right? And with the land and with like, nature. Like, this is the way we get out of, despair and depression and anxiety, right? I love the doing dishes part on page 328. Oh, nice. Oh, yeah, I just skipped that part. We have enjoyed the feast generously laid out for us by Mother Earth, but now the plates are empty and the dining room is a mess. It's time we started doing the dishes in Mother Earth's kitchen. Right, doing dishes have gotten a bad rap, but everyone who migrates to the kitchen after a meal knows that's where the laughter happens. The good conversations, the friendships. Doing dishes, like doing restoration, forms relationships. Yeah, like doing activist work, like mutual aid work is like, okay, it's time for us to do them dishes. Yeah, feeding hungry people, forming relationships with people who are in bad situations, and forming mutual beneficial relationships to help others. Restoring the land, guerrilla gardening, as they say, which is one form of land restoration, land back activities. Doing the Three Sisters, gardening, and harvesting. These are the things like that. Those are the things. I have a dishwasher, but often opt to fill the sink with soapy water and do the dishes by hand. Part of the slowing down culture and having that space to think. Okay, cool. And appreciate the meal that was had. And a friend or my partner will dry the dishes so we can have that space to chat. Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, no, that's a great, a way to redirect to, it's all about like changing your mind, your frame of thinking from this exploitative, hyper capitalist, late stage capitalist way of thinking to like a more natural, like a communal, collective, mutual, reciprocal way of thinking, right? And yeah, that's a way to do it. I do my dishes by hand and then put them in the dishwasher. Oh yeah, lots of people do that. They to dry them. I use my dishwasher. Fuck that. Like it just I need time to read. So, yeah. While dishwasher is running, I'm reading Braiding Sweetgrass. I like dishwasher gives you saves a lot of time, but if you're talking, I understand like that's a way for you to find communion with people, which is great. And this is page 333. This is the third paragraph, last sentence. Restoration is an opportunity for a partnership, for us to help. Our part of the work is not complete. Mm-hmm. I don't want to rely on machines to do everything, but that's just my preference. Why read when you can listen to YouTubers? That's one thing I hope that I don't do. I hope people, and I think people do, which is unfortunate, but oh well, you can only do so much. One of the things with this YouTube channel I tried to do was like, I don't want people to watch a video of mine and be like, okay, I don't even have to read the book. I just watch this video. I hope that my videos are teasers that motivate people to read books. And that was one of the things I didn't like. That's one of the reasons why I started the channel, because I found like all these people doing doing videos about difficult books. They're basically like, the message was, hey, just watch my video. Like, you don't have to read the book. And I'm like, no. Reading the book. So, I am spending a long ass time reading the book, reading quotes from the book, but, you're only getting a sample, right? As you probably know. Yeah, I know that was kind of a joke, but, just for some people who might be suspecting, like, oh, I just look at the stream and I don't have to read the book. Like, you're not even getting like it's just a small sample of what this book has to offer. I subscribed to your channel on my first recommendations because I saw you read books. It's a skill that's going away, and I too have a harder time with it than I used to. Wow. Yeah, I hear that. I hear like people are saying like, yeah, it's becoming harder to read. Which is, I'm not understanding that, but maybe that's just, my point of view. I don't get that. This is page 336. The last, second to last line of the first paragraph. It is not the land that has been broken, but our relationship to it. Restoration is imperative for healing the earth. But reciprocity is imperative for long-lasting, successful restoration. Like other mindful practices, ecological restoration can be viewed as an act of reciprocity in which humans exercise their caregiving responsibility for the ecosystems that sustain them. We restore the land, and the land restores us. Okay, I read a lot, but have a hard time with remembering everything. I think the attention economy is affecting my memory. Well, have you tried what I do? You probably do, because I think. Have you tried? Because I don't. It's hard for me to remember stuff too. So what I like to tab books and like highlight them and write notes. That helps me remember a lot. Because I really don't remember like off the top of my head, but when I pick up the book and I look at the highlight, it's like, oh yeah, now I remember. That might be helpful, but you might already do that. I don't know. I think the attention economy is affecting and informational big time. Yeah, that's another thing. I don't personally struggle with that at all, but I understand people do. And this is we're still on page 336. This is third paragraph, second line. The land, plants, animals, and their allies among the human people are making small steps, but ultimately it is the earth that will restore the structure and function, the ecosystem services. We might debate the authenticity of the desired reference ecosystem, but she will decide. We're not in control. What we are in control of is our relationship to the earth. Nature herself is a moving target, especially in an era of rapid climate change. Species composition may change, but relationships endure. It is the most authentic facet of the restoration. Here is where our most challenging and most rewarding work lies, in restoring a relationship of respect, responsibility, and reciprocity, and love. I put in my notes here. Home is the loving relationships we build with each other. That's what home is. What is home? Home is the loving relationships we build with each other. And I think we've lost that. Home is just a big ass house with a white picket fence, and like a husband and a wife and a 2.5 kids, and a goldfish and a dog and a cat and a big ass lawn, and that's what home is. Like, no. This is page 340. On the top, action on behalf of life transforms, but because the relationship between self and the world is reciprocal, it is not a question of first getting enlightened or saved and then acting. As we work to heal the earth heals us. So, that's another problem. It's like, we're like, oh, I don't know what to do. I need to learn before I do. It's like, no, like how, you learn by doing. Of course, you got to make mistakes, right? But the making the mistakes is how you learn, right? And so if you're in despair, you're like, oh shit, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. What am I to do? Do something. It's like, well, I don't know what to do. Well, just join a mutual aid group, or like or whatever, like food bank, or donate blood. I don't know. You can do all types of stuff. Join a community garden. Volunteer at a farmer's market. Well, I don't. I might make mistakes, and make those mistakes. Start a YouTube channel. That's free. You can do that. Or whatever. I don't know. There's so many things you can do. Let's see. But even the story of the three sisters and then when they go, I forgot the teaching of those stories. Wow. Okay. 33 and millennial, 27. Wow, you guys are older than. Oh, I was thinking you were a little younger than that. Cool, awesome. Yeah, I just had my what's the day? Last week I turned 40. I'm 40 years old now. So I'm like older millennial. Around when I was on a YouTube channel for a while, I could take my hour or two a day and play video games and turn it into but it's scary. Yeah, it can be scary. It depends. Like, you don't have to do that. There's so many things to do, but I know like some people, stage fright, and it depends on what you want to do. I think if you really want to do it, just go for it. I'm here to help. Got a Discord channel and all that if you want to talk it over. But if you're like, hey, I'm not trying to do that, then there's other ways there's other stuff you can do too. This is page 345, last paragraph. While science can be a source of and repository for knowledge, the scientific worldview is all too often an enemy of ecological compassion. It is important in thinking about this lens to separate two ideas that are too often synonymous in the mind of the public: the practice of science and the scientific worldview that it feeds. Science is the process of revealing the world through rational inquiry. The practice of doing real science brings the questioner into an unparalleled intimacy with nature, fraught with wonder and creativity, as we try to comprehend the mysteries of the more than human world. Trying to understand the life of another being or another system is so unlike our own is often humbling, and for many scientists is a deeply spiritual pursuit. Again, like there's this the author doesn't have a problem with merging spirituality and science. Like that's not like an issue for her, which I find very rare in modern times. And she say like, yeah, that's how it was back. My people millennia ago did this. So why do we have a problem with doing this now? Like, that's probably why we're struggling as a species. Happy birthday! Thanks. Contrasting with this is a scientific worldview in which a culture uses the process of interpreting science in a cultural context that uses science and technology to reinforce reductionist, materialist, economic, and political agendas. I maintain that destructive lens of the people made of wood is not science itself, but the lens of the scientific worldview. The illusion of dominance and control, the separation of knowledge from responsibility. I dream of a world guided by a lens of stories rooted in the revelation of science and framed with an indigenous worldview. Stories in which matter and spirit are both given voice. Trying to talk about the merging of science and of science and spirituality. You're saying what's the Discord? I might drop that requirement. You got to be like a Patreon, and I think it's $1. But I'm a month or something like that. But I may drop that, or you could just like become friends with me on Discord, and we could just chat one on one. That's cool because at the end of the day, like fuck the commodity product shit, fuck monetization. I get it. We all need money, and I gotta pay the bills too. But yeah, who knows? The thing is with opening the Discord, I'm gonna get a lot of trolls because I get trolls on comments all the time because you got your pro-capitalists and your people who just want to talk shit. That's the problem. So I need I need moderators, and so by putting a little cap on it, a money cap, like a lot of people aren't gonna pay to be a troll, right? So that's one issue I gotta deal with. Just have yeah. You can just be a friend, like what Nadia is. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I can only imagine if I just open it up. I get so much hate for what the things I talk about. You best believe like the tech bros are gonna go after me. But yeah, if you ever want to send me an email or something, and I'll invite you to just be a friend or something. But that's cool. Okay, so now we're on the final paragraph on page 346. In the indigenous view, humans are viewed as somewhat lesser beings in a democracy of species. We are referred to as the younger brothers of creation. So, like younger brothers, we must learn from our elders. Plants were here first and have had a long time to figure things out. They live both above and below ground and hold the earth in place. Plants know how to make food from light and water. Not only do they feed themselves, but they make enough to sustain the lives of all the rest of us. Plants are providers for the rest of the community and exemplify the virtue of generosity, always offering food. What if Western scientists saw plants as their teachers rather than their subjects? What if they told stories with that lens? Well, if they did that, the world would be a better place, right? Wouldn't it? But, they're just objects for our instrumentality. Is there a channel though with other members? I don't. No, not. Is there a channel though with other members? No, I don't think so. I don't think I do that. Okay, this is page 358, third paragraph. What is it that drew us to the hollow tonight? What crazy kind of species is it that leaves a warm home on a rainy night? Oh yeah, I remember this. and ferry salamanders across a road. So this is like they're doing this. Uh, I think it's her and the author and her daughter go to a road where salamanders are crossing the street to mate. But they have to cross this road where and they get ran over by cars, right? And so they're trying to like save as many salamanders as possible, and then they happen to come across this student group that's trying to do a research, and they're trying to count how many salamanders are actually killed by crossing the road, and they're going to use that research to get some land protection and diverting and get funding to like protect the salamanders. And so that's what they're talking about. It's tempting to call it altruism, but it's not. There is nothing selfish about it. This night heaps rewards on the givers as well as the recipients. We get to be there to witness this amazing rite, and for an evening to enter into relationship with other beings as different from ourselves as we can imagine. It has been said that people of the modern world suffer a great sadness, a species loneliness, estrangement from the rest of creation. We have built this isolation with our fear, with our arrogance, and with our homes brightly lit against the night. For a moment, as we walked this road, those barriers dissolved and we began to relieve the loneliness and know each other once again. And then I skip to down 6 lines. They bring us face to face with our innate xenophobia, sometimes directed at other species and sometimes directed at our own, whether in this hollow or in deserts halfway around the globe. Being with salamanders gives honor to otherness, offers an antidote to the poison of xenophobia. Each time we rescue slippery, spotted beings, we attest to their right to be, to live in the sovereign territory of their own lives. Right, and then second paragraph of page 359. The news makes me feel powerless. I can't stop bombs from falling, and I can't stop cars from speeding down this road. It is beyond my power. But I can pick up salamanders. For one night, I want to clear my name. What is it that draws us to this lonely hollow? Maybe it is love, the same thing that draws the salamanders from under their logs. Or maybe we walk this road tonight in such absolution. So this one is like, there's a lot of questions but no answers. But again, it's like you're building a relationship with nature, right? On Discord. Oh, okay. Just personal DMs. Yeah, no, yeah, I don't have no exclusive channel on it. Yeah, just don't be a stranger. It's all good. You can just talk. We're buddies. And Craig says salamanders were the absolute worst according to my mom. I think she was just scared they would poison us because she assumed we were dumb kids, which was correct. So this is your second time through this book, and you noted where to skip down. I'm just like reading highlights. When I read books, there's sometimes quotes will just pop out that I'll be like, wow, that's fairly interesting, and I'll just highlight it, and like maybe I'll write notes next to it, and that's how I read. What they call it, deep reading or whatever the fuck they call it, I don't know. And so I'm just reading those quotes that popped out to me. All right. And this is page 363. A lot of time you hear people say that the best thing people can do for nature is to stay away from it and let it be. There are places where that's absolutely true, and our people respected that. But we were also given the responsibility to care for the land. What people forget is that means participating. What people forget is that means participating. That the natural world relies on us to do good things. You don't show your love and care by putting what you love behind a fence. You have to be involved. You have to contribute to the well-being of the world. Again, you gotta like participate. If you want to save the world, you want to do good for the world, You gotta like get involved, right? Uh, okay, page 369, uh, fourth paragraph, second line. They carry in their bundles the precious seeds for a change of worldview, not so they can return some uh, atavistic, atavistic utopia. Oh, I never read that word out loud before. But to find the tools that allow us to walk into the future. So much has been forgotten, but it is not lost as long as the land endures and we cultivate people who have the humility and ability to listen and learn. And the people are not alone. All along the path, non human people help. We know knowledge, what knowledge the people have forgotten is remembered by the land. The others want to live too. uh, and then this is the bottom of page 370. We cannot comfort ourselves by saying it's going to be okay. We need what's in those bundles. We can't escape by going to the neighbors, and we can't afford to talk quietly. Okay, we can't just say it's going to be okay. We gotta like, we can't just talk quiet. Shh, you know, we gotta speak out. Let people know what the problem is, and let people know that we don't have to live this way. You know, capitalism isn't the only answer. Oh, what do you talk about? You know, you got it. Like, you just get a job and you work for a company, and that's how you survive. Fuck the world. It's like, no, I refuse. I refuse. And then this is page 371, third paragraph, fifth line. We need each other to take a song, a word, a story, a tool, a ceremony, and put it in our bundles. Not for ourselves, but for the ones yet to be born, for all our relations. Collectively, we assemble from the wisdom of the past a vision for the future, a worldview shaped by mutual flourishing. Mutual flourishing, baby. And then this chapter is called Defeating Wendigo. And then we live in a participatory universe. Might as well participate. Hello. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people are just like, yeah, I'm just going to van life and I'm out. But you're not solving anything by doing that. I'm just saying. But maybe, you know, some people aren't trying to solve problems. They just want to escape. The problem is you end up still depressed, anxious. It doesn't help ultimately. But this is page 375, third paragraph. Some folks argue that we need to do nothing at all, that the unholy coupling of greed and growth and carbon will make the world hot enough to melt the Wendigo heart once and for all. Climate change will unequivocally defeat economies that are based on constant taking without giving in return. So, you know, the idea like, oh, you know, what's going to happen is the world's going to go to shit, and then eventually humans will get it, and then they'll redirect. It's just we got to have this apocalypse first, right? Or, you know, the whole Marxist-Leninist thing where it's like, you know, eventually capitalism will become so bad that the proletariat or like the working class will revolt in this violent military revolution, and then communism will, you know, this. So nothing. It's you just let it happen, right? But before the Wendigo dies, it will take so much that we love along with it. We can wait for climate change to turn the world and the Wendigo into a puddle of red-tinged meltwater, or we can strap on our snowshoes and track him down, like, you know, or like we could actually like take matters into our own hands and let's do it ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hate how I like highlighted so much shit, you know, but it's a lot. You know, it's just so wise. It's fine. We gotta keep going. Let's just keep going. I almost read all my highlights. Here is the arrow that weakens the monster of overconsumption, a medicine that heals the sickness. Its name is plenty. In winter, when scarcity is at its zenith, The Wendigo rages beyond control, but when abundance reigns, the hunger fades away, and with it, the power of the monster. And then I skip 3 lines. Modern capitalist societies, however richly endowed, dedicate themselves to the proposition of scarcity. Inadequacy of economic means is the first principle of the world's wealthiest peoples. The shortage is due not to how much material wealth there actually is, but to the way in which it is exchanged or circulated. The market system artificially creates scarcity by blocking the flow between the source and the consumer. Yeah, we talked about that. The myth of scarcity. I skip down 2 lines. The very earth that sustains us is being destroyed to fuel injustice. An economy that grants personhood to corporations but denies it to the more than human beings. This is a Wendigo economy. 1 bowl and 1 spoon. That's an Indigenous saying. This is the vision of the economy of the commons, wherein resources fundamental to our well-being, like water and land and forests, are commonly held rather than commodified. Properly managed, the commons approach maintains abundance, not scarcity. These contemporary economic alternatives strongly echo the indigenous worldview in which the earth exists not as private property, but as a commons, to be tended with respect and reciprocity for the benefit of all. So there's the other answer. Like, how do we get out of this shit? Well, there's a philosophical point of view that we should embrace. And yet, while creating an alternative to destructive economic structures is imperative, it is not enough. It is not just changes in policies that we need, but also changes in the heart, or, the mind. Scarcity and plenty, but, by heart meaning we gotta, start caring about one another and caring about society, the earth, right? So is it compassion and kindness, right? That's what needs to happen. Scarcity and plenty are as much qualities of the mind and spirit as they are of the economy. Gratitude plants a seed for abundance. And this is page 377, second paragraph, second line. To refuse to participate in an economy that destroys the beloved earth, to line the pockets of the greedy, to demand an economy that is aligned with life, not stacked against it, it's easy to write that, harder to do, right? Well, that's true, but we can do it, me and Nadia, part of Food Not Bombs, that's doing it. But there's so many other different kinds of mutual aid groups or activist organizations that you can be a part of. It's hard, but it can be done. And then this is the end of the 3rd paragraph here. We are not powerless against the Wendigo, they say. Remember that we already have everything we need, and so we conspire, right? Organize, land back. Okay, this is page 382, 4th paragraph, 2nd line. When berries spread out their giveaway blanket, offering their sweetness to birds and bears and boys alike, the transaction does not end there. Sometimes beyond gratitude is asked of us. The berries trust that we will uphold our end of the bargain and disperse their seeds to new places to grow, which is good for berries and for boys. They remind us that all flourishing is mutual. We need berries, and the berries need us. Their gifts multiply by our care for them and dwindle from our neglect. We are bound in a covenant of reciprocity, a pact of mutual responsibility to sustain those who sustain us. And then, let's see here. Greg says, people like to be professional problem finders. The bloody revolt thing seems reasonable enough. The communism rising thing, not so much. Right. So, yeah, the thing is, okay, we're going to wait for this bloody revolt. And then it happens, and it's like, oh, fuck, so shit just got worse. Right? So let's not wait for that to happen. Right? Let's do something now. Page 383, 2nd paragraph. Imagine that while our neighbors were holding a giveaway, someone broke into their home to take whatever he wanted. We would be outraged at the moral trespass. So it should be for the earth. The earth gives away for free the power of wind and sun and water, but instead we break open the earth to take fossil fuels. Had we taken only that which was given to us, had we reciprocated the gifts, we would not have to fear our own atmosphere today. But we do. Right? So you might say like, "Wow, stop humanizing the earth." But if we did humanize the earth, we wouldn't be dealing with this shit called climate change, right? That's all I'll say. Like, there's a point to all this. And what is this? This is page 385. One, two. Yeah, this is just the middle of the page here. Indigenous ways of understanding recognize the personhood of all beings as equally important, not in a hierarchy, but a circle. All right. So again, like acknowledging the earth as a person, or acknowledging the personhood of the earth and nature, and not as a hierarchical structure, but as a reciprocal relationship. Mm-hmm. And that is all the highlights I have for the book. So, whether you will watch this later or just watched 15 minutes of it, and just will tune in at another time or not watch it all. Just I think that's it. That's it for this book. Any other? I have two questions. Okay. How do you select your next book to read, and how long does it take you to read the book like this with your note taking? Let's see. How do you select your next book? Oh, it just depends on a number of different factors. I'm part of several book clubs, and that will decide my book selection. But also, I just read on my own because I do like to read the great philosophical works. Currently, I'm reading Immanuel Kant's Prolegomena. It'll probably misspell. I gotta learn how to say that. To Any Future Metaphysics. So I'm reading some Immanuel Kant because this is one of the great philosophical works of continental philosophy, and so I like to. It just depends on what I'm interested in at the time. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. And how long does you read a book? It depends. How long the book is, how much words of wisdom does it have? There's no one. There's no average. It's all over the place. It just really depends on the book, how long it takes. Amazing. Highlighted a bunch more during this passing of the book. Thank you for this, Neil. How did you find doing this over live? We made it 3.5 hours. Phew, but the time went so fast for me. It's fine. I mean, I run marathons, so I'm good at doing. I can do things for a while, but I mean that's more of a question for can other people. Is this good for other people or viewers? We'll see. But time flew for you. That's really cool. But you were right. It was a lot of back and forth between us, but other folks did engage as well. That I kind of just thought, but I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. And I think y'all are my homies. So, I gotta give some little extra love to my homies, like, patrons and pals. So, I was like, what, let me, build my relationship with y'all. I like being able to participate in discussion during the live, though. It's different in comments. Okay. Never heard of that Kant book. I'm just starting out, but interested in Kant and Hegel in particular. I realize that I'm an idealist. Okay, cool. Cool. You're an idealist. Yep, that's Hegel and Kant. No, he wrote that book, the Prolegomena, which is, we'll talk about that. I'll definitely make a video of that. This was special, though, because I don't read a lot of books you read, but this one was nice to discuss since I had already read it. Excellent. I read more of the contemporary books you talk about. Okay, okay, cool. The ones that are not by white men. You will have a live stream on the Kant book next? Probably not. I'll probably just do a normal video with about the Kant. I do, however, have both her books. I have Gathering Moss and I have The Serviceberry by the author who wrote the Braiding Sweetgrass, which is awesome. So Braiding Sweetgrass, that's a big ass book. It's like about 400 pages. I was expecting, this is her new book that she came out this year. And it's so small. I was surprised. I'm like, whoa, it's tiny. it's like a novella. I was kind of shocked. And even her first book, Grading Moss, which is highly critical acclaim, got a bunch of awards. Also, like, not that long. I was got a little surprised by that. Like, okay, I can probably read these. I mean, this you can read this in like an afternoon. It's just like I was shocked. I'm like, whoa, okay. So I gotta get him. Yeah, but yeah, so like yeah, this is my favorite author, man. I had to get the books. This is my favorite book of all time. I love this book. This book is amazing. The new top for me. And it was fun just reading it through, and I learned so much from it. And you know, it's equipping me with tools to change the world for the better. It's what more could you ask for? True top tier philosophy right here. Top tier philosophy right here. It doesn't get any more philosophical than that. It's practical. Metaphysical, epistemological. I mean, they go through the gamut. Epistemology, environmentalism, philosophy of science, philosophy of religion, political philosophy. Like it just kind of goes through the gambit. Philosophy of history of philosophy. Like, it covers so much shit. It's just a masterpiece, a masterwork. I love it. Contemporary as in past 50 years, which is contemporary for philosophical writing. I think more indigenous and black writers. What contemporary? Can't wait for the Gathering Moss and the Strawberry discussion. I hope you do videos on those too. Or we can chat. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they got philosophy or if it's... of course they got philosophy. Obviously they got philosophy. But let's see if it warrants... these might be more of a live stream thing because they're a bit short. But we'll see. When am I reading them? Probably after I read the Immanuel Kant's thing. Probably read that, one of those. So after this one, I'll read that one. Yeah, I also like reading the OG books so I can be in the know. So when the philosophy bros come at me and say like, "Oh, stop reading this woke shit. You don't know what you're talking. You never read the great classics." I'm like, "No, actually, I did. I did read the great." It's very powerful to say that to actually be able to do that. To be like, they're like, "Oh, you'll have no idea. Hegel said this." Like, no, he didn't say that because I've read it. And they're like, "Oh shit, this guy knows what he's talking about." And actually, you can learn a lot from indigenous philosophers, and a lot of Hegel has a lot of holes in his philosophy, and I can tell you the holes, and I can tell you where these indigenous philosophers covered a lot more than he could. So I do like reading a lot of the OG old ass canonical philosophy books just to do that kind of stuff, and not to bash the philosophy trolls, but just to just give an overall have an overall understanding of philosophy as a whole, not just Western philosophy, but like just the philosophy throughout it's all of its human dimensions, right? That's pretty cool. You have the evidence on your channel that you read a lot of the classics. Yeah. What do you mean by indigenous philosophers? I mean, what was brought up in this book? The book of the story of Nana Bazho and the three sisters, like that story. Those philosophical tales of which we talked about. And there's another story covered here about this other creation story about the first this woman the sky woman who falls from the sky and like dances and creates the earth and falls gets caught by a turtle and the turtle becomes the platform for earth. And that's a pretty cool one too, because it has these philosophical ideas in them. And there's a lot of philosophical indigenous parables and stories and metaphors and analogies that are talked about in here. So that's what I'm talking about. Oh, as in who? Well, so the thing is, like, with indigenous, a lot of indigenous philosophy, they were more collectivist and communist and social. They kind of have more of a socialist. So a lot of the stories aren't attributed to like a single person, right? They're passed on via just the peoples, right? So they don't really attribute like their stories to like a single person, like, because Western civilization, that kind of culture is very individualistic, and it's like, well, this person developed this thing where a lot of indigenous cultures, they didn't roll like that. So we don't really know like who individually started these, and it's not really important, right? It's more just what's more important is the philosophical information that's in them. It's just another way of telling stories and telling and sharing philosophy, right? Which is great. Like, I value it a lot, and a lot of it was passed on through oratory. A lot of it wasn't written down, so that's another reason why it's like there's not like individual attribution to a lot of these stories. Contemporaries that contain the digital, yeah, that too. Oh, okay, so yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm always gonna get old school because these old ass continental philosophers and existentialists, they got some good stuff too, right? It's just we gotta incorporate it all, like just leave nothing behind, right? Incorporate it all. But I know not everybody has the time to do that, but I do because I have the privilege. So, like, that's why I rent that washing machine, so I can, so I can have the time to read. Are you reading Grimm's fairy tales? That's too. Sounds like I could train some of these stories. Yeah. Oh, you up in Ohio? Cool. Yeah, I'm in Tennessee. All right, peeps. I mean, we've been on for a long time, but it's been fun. It's been fun. I guess I will talk to you next time, next week or whatever. I don't know. It's a long ass hangout. Maybe this takes the 7, 8, 9, 10. Hour and 3 hours and a half. Yeah, that might. We did that. I did that debate that was really long too. This might tie it, or maybe it's longer. I don't know. What time I was on? Okay. Well, anyway, thanks. Thank you all for those who watched and for those who participated. Nadia and Greg and Jeremy was on for a while, but also the people on the future who will watch this video later. Feel free to comment below, or not. Just want to watch it. Of course, like I have no expectation that people are going to watch all 3.5 hours of this, but if you want, it's there available for you, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, thank you for listening to me gush over my new all-time favorite book, and I'll see y'all later. You've been listening to Black Ponderer. Tune in for more philosophical thought.